The demon turns to Charlotte and tells her that he has been waiting for her. The knight screams and tells the main character not to do this, because he believes that she needs to retreat, because this demon brings death and cannot be defeated by relying only on human strength. The man claims that if he uses more magic in his condition, her life will be in danger and therefore suggests retreating. Charlotte asks where they will retreat because she believes that if they do not finish him off now, it will be the end for all of them. The knight agrees with the lady, and she says that this is why she is now going to fight until her last breath, because he himself taught her this. The girl believes that magic obeys the will of the one who uses it, and therefore suggests not to worry, because mana and magic are her family and friends, and this land is the place of her birth, and this world is her ally. On the day of destruction, a girl saved the world, and the demon asks her to remember his words, because he still intends to come for her and swears to it. He claims to devour her completely. After that day, the whole world began to call the girl an archmage. The woman tells Charlotte that she is a genius, and her abilities have exceeded all her expectations, and the girl agrees with her and says that she knows it. An elderly woman asks if she could be at least a little more modest. The main character asks when the teacher will stop behaving like this, and then claims that she constantly pretends to be sick, or that she is about to die. The lady says that she has a dying wish, and the girl claims that she is not dying because she has a common cold. The teacher suggests that she find students for herself, because now that she has shown the world her power, there will be many opponents on her path that only she can defeat. The woman tells her to take 5 students who will share this burden with her because she should not live her life alone as a teacher and find her love and start a family and be happy. Charlotte asks in surprise how she can do this because she thinks that maybe she is stronger, younger, and smarter than the teacher, but she doesn't know how she can find it. Hearing this, the lady picked up a broom and asked if she was being modest. She then wanted to hit the student, but she quickly ran away. The maid, watching these ladies, smiled and thought how full of energy they were, as always. The main character hid, and the teacher asked where she went. Much water has flowed under the bridge since that day, but Archmage Charlotte's outstanding talent has surpassed the first 8 circles of magic. And the students she trained were hailed as geniuses of the century. Some called Charlotte a heroine who saved the world from the evil spirit. Others considered her the great hope of magic. And even so, after all these achievements, her human ultimately met his end. Charlotte thought she was tired because her stupid students were so intrusive and she didn't understand why it was so hard to escape them. And who would have thought they'd put tracking magic in a ball? The girl understands that if they lose contact for a second, they'll make such a fuss as if the world were ending. And the lady doesn't understand how to tell her that she's about to die. The main character believes that because of the blessing of the fairy king, she always looked young, and they have already forgotten how old she really is and how old she turned this year, because it seems like 122. The lady understands that she has lived long enough and everything in this world has its beginning and its end, and of course her heart aches for her students, but she cannot take care of them forever, because each of them has their own path. And although she still worries about the youngest, she believes that an old woman like her cannot accompany them, but can only hope that they will live a good life and be able to fulfill their destiny. Charlotte reflects on how she never imagined she would die like this, and that this would be her final spell. When she casts the spell, the mana stored within her body will burst forth and fill the world, and her spirit will torment this land and become the breath of a new god. The main character does not understand how there could be a more noble death than this, and believes that even the teacher would be pleased because she lived a worthy life. At that moment, a whirlwind of memories flashed through Charlotte's mind. After all, when she plunged into eternal sleep, each of her students would receive a letter from her with her last will and testament. And she was sure they would be shocked, but hopefully not too sad. Charlotte thinks the potato fries she had for dinner last night were delicious, but she also thinks she could have stepped on the face of that horse-faced idiot who burned her research a couple more times. Before her death, the girl would like to fight Jeffrey again and win against him, and remembers that she forgot to pay the debt at the Traveler's Tavern and everything else was fine. But there was one regret in Charlotte's life that she could not tell anyone about. And that regret was love. Charlotte had a very eventful life, filled with magic, battles, and caring for her students. But this girl, blessed with wisdom and life's knowledge, had one regret. She never knew love as hot as a flame and gentle as a spring breeze. The main character believes that she has never had any regrets in her life, and she is just a little sad about this one thing and just a little bit. The man turns to His Majesty and says that a more thorough investigation is needed in the lands of Rodon, and asks him to think about this issue. At this time, the king saw that a letter had arrived to him, and for a moment he forgot about state affairs. The servant begs his master to pardon him because he did what he was ordered to do, and claims they forced him to do it. At that moment, the master saw the letter and found it very intriguing. The girl with pink hair saw that the nest had fallen and asked the little chicks to sit quietly. And at that time, she saw a letter. At this time, the main character understands that this is the last path, and it seems to her that her dying spell worked, and she thinks that she is pleased and also wonders how a person feels after death, because her body seems lighter than a feather. And she thinks that this is because her spirit left the body and she can see with her right eye as if she is still alive. Charlotte doesn't understand why she's still alive and thinks her magic didn't work, but she assumes that even if it did, she would have died anyway. The girl was confused when she heard her own voice. Archmage Charlotte, at the age of 121, has dedicated her life to serving the world and believes that she has finally entered into eternal sleep. The disciples, mourning their mistress, say that now they will protect this world instead of her, and therefore let her not worry but rest in peace. At this time, the main character thought that she was counting on them and then said goodbye. Charlotte believes this is how it was supposed to be, but she thinks the mana has left her body, meaning the spell definitely worked. She doesn't understand why she's still alive and why her body feels so strange, like she's become a child. The lady realizes that she has really become small and cannot believe it. True magic begins with the will of a person who wants to fulfill the desire of the heart. The regret she carried throughout her life, this small regret, saved her life. It turns out that love was the reason for this. The guy with red hair asks what kind of love this is and thinks it's just funny because these people have never met His Excellency, and yet they continue to send him letters declaring their love. A girl with black hair asks him if he's jealous. The man insists it's nonsense. The lady says that their distinguished archduke quickly gained his fame and now they have what they have. The guy with red hair says that the further he goes, the more confusing this strange situation becomes, and he thinks that he should quickly find a girl he likes and marry her. And he should have done this 50 years ago. The man claims that today I was a little girl and said that I was looking for His Serene Highness the Archduke, but at the same time I called him by his name. He does not understand why this pea-sized girl turned out to be so rude. The guy says that her manner of speech was also very strange, and there was something generally strange about her. The little girl asks the young man where the nearest magic shop is and wonders if he can tell her. The man looked at the girl in surprise and remained silent. She didn't understand why everything was so complicated. Suddenly, he replied that the girl should turn the corner and, when she saw the main square, go to the 3rd street. Hearing this, the main character thought that she had come all this way here but still could not meet Jeffrey, and her mana rings were empty, so she could not use a detection spell and could not teleport to him either. The man says that she is on the 2nd floor of a house with a blue roof and then asks the little girl if she can hear him. At this time, the girl thought that she got rid of her things before casting the spell, and now she has nothing, and thinks that she needs to sell something to the magic shop to get money. The sweet lady thanks the gentleman and reflects on how it feels like she has returned to the beginning of her life's journey. Suddenly, the door with the guy falls on the man who told the girl where she needed to go. The knight asks the boy to repeat what he just said. Then he explains that he is now in Klaus, the land of knights, and asks how he dared to suggest that there is a man stronger than their archduke, the master of the sword, Luster. The guy claims that of course such a person exists, and that this is Charlotte, the Archmage of the Marvel Empire, and there is no one stronger than her. The knight screams, calling himself a piece of shit and asking how a resident of Klaus can utter such horrible words. The guy replies that he's a mage first and foremost, and only then a resident of the duchy. Watching them, the girl thought that they were really fighting over something stupid. The knight claims he's a traitor and tells Klaus not to pollute the clean air with his breath, so he should go back to Marvel. The boy asks why he should go, since he believes he's a mage but still a citizen of Klaus. The little girl asks what they've done and orders them to get out of there quickly. The man, screaming, asks what the little one said, and then orders her to stay out of the adults' business and stay out of there. Meanwhile, the villagers watched them and thought they were arguing about who was stronger, Archduke Lewister or Archmage Charlotte. They suggested the boys get out of there, or they would kill this sweet young man. Charlotte screamed, "Enough of this, let them come down." Hearing her, the men quieted down a bit while the girl took the door off the man. The knight asks in surprise what that was, because his body just happened on its own and he doesn't understand what happened. And then he turns to the magician and asks if he just used a spell on him. Residents do not understand what happened, and it seems to them that the child just stopped a fight and they think that adults should not behave like that in front of children. Archduke Louis asks the people what happened, as he thinks there was so much noise here just now. The little girl is surprised to see him. The gentleman asks His Majesty what happened since he left right in the middle of the conversation, and it is difficult for such a weak person like him to keep up with him. Louister reports that he is certain that he just felt a familiar presence and he wonders if he was mistaken. The knight turns to the Archduke and says that it is an honor to meet him, because he always wanted to ask him something during a personal meeting, and then asks what he thinks about the Archmage. Marvel Charlotte. His Majesty asks why he must answer this question. The man, hearing this, smiles and says he's right, because everything is so obvious that there's no need to waste time answering. The knight says that he thinks so too, and has always thought that it is even ridiculous to put the names of the Archduke and the Archmage on the same level, and then asks how a simple mage can compare with a master of the sword, since he believes that it is not for nothing that they say that the sword is a force that has no equal in the world. The warrior wonders if some girl without a family or a name can stand in the same ranks with the Archduke, and he wants her to know the bitterness of her defeat. Hearing this, the gentleman grabs him by the face and tells him to watch his language, and then asks if he didn't want to become a knight, and he is sorry that his dream is not destined to come true. But it seems that he even trained his body and therefore suggests listening to him carefully. The Archduke says that Klaus has no need of a worthless person like him. Watching this, the main character grabbed the gentleman by the cloak and said that it was enough. She asked Jeffrey what he was doing and whether he imagined himself a king or a god. The girl asks if he's fallen into senile dementia and why he's tormenting someone over a few words. The gentleman replies that he only wanted to scare him because he's still so young and says such terrible things. His Majesty lets the man go and says that he was just playing with him, and then kneels in front of the little girl and asks if she is Lottie. The gentleman approaches the Archduke and asks if he has calmed down and also inquires whether this girl is his daughter. Louis turns to the baby and says that her magical presence was so weak that he even thought he was mistaken, and then asks if it was really her. At this time, the residents watching them do not understand what is happening, because this child again stopped the fight, and they were surprised whether it was really Archduke Louister. The gentleman asks the girl why she's so small and picks her up. She asks him to let her go while he talks about it in a friendly manner. The woman says that lace bows are in fashion this year, but if the bow is adorned with a precious stone, it will look even more wonderful. Then she offers to take a look, as the young lady is very beautiful in this dress, and asks if it's true. His Majesty looked at the baby and said that he liked her, and then said that he wanted to look at other models. The saleswoman says they've got a lot of dresses in different styles. He says that's great and orders a dress of every style. Charlotte objects and says that's enough, then asks what he's doing and reminds him that she said she'd be happy with any clothes. The young gentleman asks if she understands that this is the first time he's seen her as a child and asks what's wrong with her trying on these dresses. The protagonist addresses the woman and asserts that this will be enough, then tells her she can go. The Archduke thinks she's a troublemaker and tells the saleswoman to leave them alone. The woman, hearing this, was surprised and did not understand what it was, and she became interested in why this little girl allowed herself to address the Archduke as you. Louis asks the girl why she looks like this. Because he couldn't contact her for a long time, considering the state of her mana, he doesn't think that she changed her appearance with the help of a spell and asks what happened. Charlotte says that she thought that there were no regrets in her life because she lived a rather rich life and thought that she had nothing left to strive for. But this turned out to be untrue because there was no love in her life. The gentleman asks what she means by that. The girl eats the candy and says it's delicious, but he asks her to explain why she has no regrets in life and what love she's talking about, since he doesn't understand how this relates to her becoming a child. The Archduke asks if she's already tried to kill herself. Hearing this, the protagonist thinks he's a smart guy, but then explains that things were a little different, and since that's how it turned out, she wanted to leave her mana behind for the world. The young lady believes that she has lived enough and is a little tired of everything, and already thought that she had plunged into eternal sleep but found herself alive again. The little girl screams and asks why and what it is. He replies that his eyes sweat from time to time, and the girl, surprised, asks what he's talking about. Jeffrey asks if she really was going to kill herself without telling him anything about it. But the little girl objects and says that she did not kill herself. The gentleman says that the next time she is about to die, she should tell him that he has also lived long enough in this world and therefore plunge into eternal sleep with her. The Archduke asks if it's all because of the curse and believes that it's all his fault because he should have stopped her that day but couldn't. The main character calms the man and says that no one is to blame for this because it was her choice and only she should bear responsibility for the consequences. Jeffrey claims that this is just her Lottie and believes that she should not bear all the hardships alone, and then asks why she can't at least rely on him, her close friend, Jeffrey's dearest friend, Tane Lewister. The little girl says that she made such a decision and wonders if magic doesn't begin with the heart's desire. Since magic decided to rid her of her only regret and gave her this new appearance, she decided to live her new second life again. The gentleman asks if her regret was love, and whether she means love between a man and a woman. Then he asks why they don't start with her manner of speaking like a little old lady. Hearing this, Lottie asks what's wrong and what's wrong with her manner of speech. At this time, a guy with blonde hair ran up to the coffin and said that he would find her. A man with red hair asks His Excellency what's going on. The gentleman says he simply has to answer the question, and then the girl asks if he remembers her. The guy says she's the strange girl who came this morning. Hearing this, the gentleman smiled and the little girl glared at him. Jeffrey tells me to forget about it and tells me to introduce myself, then says he has 3 seconds. The man says his name is Phaeton. Sylvan, age 23, is the unmarried third son of the Marquis and currently one of the knights of the Grand Duke Louis II. He has sworn to serve his grace until death. His hobbies include reading, special fencing skills, and an aversion to spicy food. Otherwise, he is not picky about food. The little girl says that he, like her, can't eat spicy food, and the gentleman says he's coming over, then claps his hands and says congratulations because he just became the Akmag's personal protector. And so he's confident he can handle it. Hearing this, the Phaeton was surprised and thanked him. The Archduke said that he would then inform him of the remaining details of the work. The main character thought that this is how they found security for her, and the gentleman asks if she really plans to hide the truth from her students. Charlotte says she won't tell anyone about herself because she knows they've probably already received the letters with her last will and testament. And now that her body has become like this, and her mana has left her, they won't be able to find her trace and will think she's truly fallen into eternal slumber. Jeffrey says that if she thinks so, then it's for the best. The girl explains that they relied on her too much in the past and believes that if they think she's dead, then they can become independent and live their lives based on their own decisions. The Archduke tells the little girl that he feels she doesn't know her students well. However, the most important thing is that she asked him for help, and for her sake he will do anything, even manage to cope with her students. Lottie asks what else to do and then threatens that if he lays a finger on her students, she'll kill him. The man says he understands, then reports that his eyes have suddenly started sweating again. The main character says she liked this person. Jeffrey thinks it's a quiet land in a remote rural area, and the name is Arya Lyson. His Majesty declares that from this moment on, Archmage Charlotte becomes Count Lyson's daughter, Arya Lyson. He then declares his joy that her eyes have healed and affirms that he will always be by her side in this life and will do everything in his power to help her. The man says that as her best friend, he wants to wish her new life to be filled with happiness. At this time, the main character thought that perhaps this was the new chance that mana and magic gave her, and she believed that she would live not as an archmage who saved the world, and not as someone's teacher, but as an ordinary person. The girl asks what these little things are that look like ripe apples. Phaeton explains that these are Ms. Arya's new friends and then smiles and says that they are also his cousins. The Archduke asks if it is not wonderful to have new friends for a new life. The little girl with red hair says that this girl just called them babies, and then claims that she is younger than them, and that is why she is a child here. The gentleman reminds her that he said she really doesn't know her students well. Then he turns to him and suggests he speak since he's already come. The silver-haired boy asks where Charlotte is. Jeffrey wonders if he's the one who should be asking her that question. The man explains that he hasn't been able to contact her recently and asks what happened to Lottie. He argues that if Lord Charlotte is staying in Klaus's lands, it's impossible for the Lord not to know about it. The Archduke says that the youth has become ill-mannered lately, and even though he's his friend's apprentice, his patience has its limits. Then he takes the sword and announces that it's time to begin his education. The red-haired girl says it's all hers and insists he promised last time. The boy asks if she believes him and then says it's time for her to stop eating because she'll soon turn into a pig. The main character looked at them and said there was no need to fight over food. Hearing this, the girl approached her and hugged her, telling her that she was very kind. The boy asks why she gave away her piece because he thinks that his sister eats a lot anyway. And then he gave his plate with cake to the lady. Lottie says no, and suggests he feed himself since he needs to eat a lot and grow tall. Hearing this, he says that she really is very strange. then asks if her name is Arya Leeson and asks if he can just call her Arya. Hearing this, the girl thought that this was now her name, and she was thinking that maybe Jeffrey was right, because in her new life, she would also have to be a new person. The main character says that he can call her that and reflects on the fact that she should now meet new people and live carefree and relax in a new place, and perhaps erase that regret by meeting the person destined for him. However, the young lady understands that first she needs to grow up a little. At this time, the lady turns to His Excellency and asks in surprise what happened during the night. The man replies that considering that 3 of the Archmage's students came to him, everything is fine. The Archduke remembered that they asked where their teacher was because they understood that he was with her until the end, and asked her to tell them what happened. The girl says that it seems to her that no one present here knows where the teacher is and thinks that maybe something happened to her, because she doesn't feel anything unusual about her presence, no mana, nothing at all, and she thinks that she really disappeared from this world. Another student asks what kind of nonsense she is talking about because she thinks that there is something and there must be something else. Jeffrey says that something really did happen to Lottie and asks if they could tell him more about it. The guy says that he doesn't think that his grandfather knows anything and then says that he can't come to terms with it after this letter. The elf girl says she'll meet Carcillion and believes that perhaps if they follow the teacher's path from Marvel, they'll find some clues. The young man asserts that he'll find her even if he has to turn everything upside down. The guy with silver hair claims that he will come back. The Archduke thought that he should hide her well so that no one could find her, and believed that it would be better for them not to see each other for some time. 8 years later, the young master asks Lady Layson to wait for him. He kneels with flowers in his hands and declares that his heart has belonged to her since their first meeting, and asks her to accept his sincere intention to make her his wife. Meanwhile, the main character doesn't understand who he is or what kind of child he is. And then she remembers that she saw him in a literary circle, and it seems he only recently came of age. Arya says that there is such a big gap between them that she is afraid that they will never be able to overcome it, and then claims that they cannot be together. And at that time, she thought that she had to leave. 8 years have passed since the girl changed the death spell and woke up in a small body, and she lives in this body as Arya Leeson. The young lady realizes that from her movements to her manner of speech, she has completely honed her skills as an Arya, but she still can't shake the feeling that her mind doesn't match her body. The guy screamed and declared that he loved her and asked her to wait. Meanwhile, she thought about how he was still a child. The red-haired girl asks why she's so late, and her brother suggests they hurry up. The protagonist says she's already on her way, and then thinks about how it seems love remains out of reach in this life. In the capital of the Empire, Klaus, a girl quickly runs down the street and then she hid. The man approaches the miss and says that everything is fine and suggests that she not be afraid, and then says that they are not bad people. Lulis with them, and then invites him to introduce himself. The guy says his name is Jerome. Halford and the grandfather with red hair says that her name is Judith. The main character reveals her name is Arya. The man holds a flower pot and says it's a small explanation for the new members of the Lulu Club, as it's a new type of flower bred by the magician Mervil 3 years ago. Judy says that it is a new fashion trend in Avent to grow Lulu. And then she asks the lady if it is not wonderful, because it has magical properties and changes the color of its petals depending on the mood of the person who planted it. Grandpa says that when a person is happy, the petals are painted in a bright color, and when a person is sad, the flower darkens. But Lulu also has a romantic story attached to her. It happens very rarely, but if the lepists. If Lulu acquires a rich red color, this means that the person who planted it will meet the love destined for them. The man suggests waiting a little because he will now bring seeds for the newcomers. Judy grabs the girl's hand and tells her they're going somewhere new. The man tells them to be careful because the seeds are already planted in pots. The red-haired lady says the girl hasn't been to the capital in a while, so they need to make time for everything. Arya insists they'll be there for a while, so there's no need to rush. The little girl says that she is right and believes that if she doesn't do anything, she will just sit in the room again. Arya says that they have been walking around the city for 10 days already, and asks if they can take a little break and suggests going in and eating cake since there is a very good place nearby. The man wanted to grab the girl by the hand, but Judy noticed it in time and did not let him do it, and then asks who he is. Arya tells her to let him go because he's Lord Sylvan. The girl, surprised, asks why he's wearing that cloak. The Lord praises the boys and says they're great. The guy asks why he tried to sneak up on them like a thief. Sylvan explains that he needed to deliver the message discreetly. The main character saw the carriage and realized she needed to go to it. The gentleman holding a huge bouquet of roses said they hadn't seen each other for a long time. Lottie, surprised, asks if he's coming back from the party and what kind of flowers they are. The man explains that he picked them up from the roadside and asks if they smell wonderful, and if she wants them. The girl replies that she doesn't need it. Jeffrey says she doesn't look well and asks what happened, wondering if she's heard any bad rumors. The little girl, surprised, asks what rumors he's talking about. The Archduke tells her to forget about it and then asks if she likes Klaus's capital. Lottie says it's a very peaceful and vibrant atmosphere and a nice city. He asks about love and wonders if she's found the love that could erase her regret. The man asks if that's why she came to the capital. She replies that it's not exactly true, but he suggests that if she looks closer, then gets closer, and says that she doesn't know. But she suspects he might be much closer than she thinks. The main character agrees with him and says that she just wanted to ask him about the former captain of the Knights, Baron, because he is well over 90, and also asks if he is married and asks if he can introduce her to him. Jeffrey replies that he died last year due to old age, and the lady says that she should probably be glad that she didn't die at her age and is still thinking about love. The Archduke tells her not to speak, as she's simply thinking about people close to her. The young lady asks what about the Alphonse's finance ministers. He shrieks and replies that his great-granddaughter just got married the other day. Lottie asks if this is true, and then says that her congratulations and asks why he is yelling at her, and says that his trousers will get dirty and offers to sit normally. The main character looked at the guy in surprise and asked what was wrong and what had happened. He replied that he just felt sad about something. Charlotte asks if there's been any news from Marvel about her students. He explains that Marvel's sky is as peaceful as Klaus's. At this time, the guy runs away from the Knights, but they suddenly surrounded him and said that if he continues to run away, he will only worsen his situation and therefore ask him to follow them. The young man thinks this is stupid and then asks why he is wasting his energy chasing him. When Judy saw the girl, she asked if she had already talked to her brother Sylvan, but suddenly saw that she had forgotten her gloves at the club and they were from a limited collection. Lottie says she'll bring them, and the red-haired girl offers to go with her. The main character objects and says she'll go alone because she wants to be alone for a while. The lady claims that she will be back soon and invites them to go and eat some cake. When the girl left, Judy said that she looked so exhausted, and her brother thought that it was all her fault because he thought that all she did was drag people around with her. Judy says it's his fault because he suggested they go to the Lulu Growing Club. Suddenly, they see the Capitol's security and don't understand what's happening. At this time, the main character is thinking about what if she comes to the Capitol, she will be able to find out news about her students because she is interested in whether everything is well with them and thinks that probably nothing special is happening. The girl thinks to think positively, but when she went inside, she realized that it was very quiet and thought that everyone had already left. Meanwhile, the woman tells the girl that a kidnapping has occurred, and the townspeople are so alarmed by what's happening. Judy, surprised, asks if she means to say the guards were in such a hurry because the kidnapper was somewhere nearby. Jerome says they need to go after Arya, as he's worried she left alone. The woman, surprised, asks if they really didn't know anything, and explains that the real reason for all the fuss is because rumor has it that Dan Monte from Marvel is the suspect. The lady asks the guys if they have heard of him and then says that Dan Monte is the leader of the Black Moon. At this time, Dan Monte asks the main character if she knows about Charlotte, an outstanding archmage. Marvel. DeMonte is Charlotte's third student. Hearing the question, the main character hid her face with her cloak. She saw that the man was holding a flower in a pot in his hands, and then she quickly ran away. The guy wanted to approach the stranger, but she either pushed him or took advantage of the moment to run away. He doesn't understand what just happened, because when he fell, he broke the table, and the stranger was already gone. When Judy saw the girl, she screamed and asked what had happened to her. She replied that nothing was out of the ordinary and suggested they go home. Judy was then asked if she had seen the kidnapper. Avent recently. And these are very bad people who are taking citizens, regardless of age or gender. The girl says they can't be caught because a very powerful person is behind these crimes. Hearing this, the main character asks who the suspect is. Jerome replies that it is Dan Monte and asks if Arya knows who he is, and then says that he is Charlotte's third student. The boy asks how ordinary guards can capture him, even though he thinks Archduke Louise is capable of it. Judy doesn't understand why a Marvel resident is kidnapping people here, Klaus. Her brother says there must be reasons behind it that they don't know anything about. The young man asks Arya what happened, having seen her surprised look. Meanwhile, she can't understand how this stupid Dan is kidnapping people in Klaus. 30 years before, a lady with black hair turns to Mrs. Eleanor and tells her that there has been another explosion, and it seems that she cannot control this terrible demonic red liquid that flows in his veins, and then asks how much longer she must suffer next to him. The lady thinks that this child is a real devil. Then the main character decided to go to this guy's place, and when she knocked on the door, she heard a scream for everyone to get out. However, she ignored his words and announced that she was entering. When the lady entered the room, she saw that everything was turned upside down and even the furniture was broken, and the boy hid under the table. Charlotte asks if he is very scared and then says that she thought that the danger had already passed. But she was wrong. Unfortunately, everyone is safe because he tried so hard to cope with his powers and he succeeded. The main character apologizes for being late and then turns to the boy and asks him to come to her and also suggests that he hurry up because his teacher's hands are already hurting. Dan ran up to the lady, hugged her, and asked if it was true that no one was hurt. The lady replied that everything was fine, and he asked if that meant he wasn't the devil. Charlotte says of course not, but the baby says it's very good. The young woman says it's probably a misunderstanding. Hearing this, the man asks what she's talking about. The woman says nothing and explains she's just talking to herself. The lady asks the butler if he's ever heard of kidnappings in event. He replies that he doesn't know the details and then asks what happened. The main character realized that Jeffrey, this man, knew about this for sure, but did not tell her anything and believes that she should know for sure. But first she must investigate everything. Charlotte put on a black cloak and decided to go out into the city, but realized that judging by the number of guards, the city's security had been strengthened. But she went out unnoticed. The lady thought that there really was a kidnapper operating in the capital, and she wondered where he had gone. People in cloaks grabbed the man and said that they were not bad people, but at that time he lost consciousness. The guy asks what he'll say because he thinks their hair is quite similar and realizes it would be nice if their eye color matched too. His friend insists he's not a woman. The guy turns to the foreman and says he thinks someone else is there. Hearing this, he understands and heads around the corner where he sees a girl and asks how Miss is doing. The student says that if there's a witness, it could cause them a headache later. The stranger asks for mercy. They tell her not to be afraid because they won't hurt her, and they think it's just awkward because she doesn't fit the criteria they use to select people. The man asks what they'll do. Meanwhile, the main character approaches them and says that first, they'll apologize for frightening the young lady, then send her home and voluntarily surrender to the guards and receive their just punishment. Hearing this, the guy asks in surprise who she is. Without thinking twice, Lottie punches him in the forehead and asks if they're planning on kidnapping people, because she can't believe they've stooped so low. The lady reports that she never taught them this. Gilhart, the head of the Black Moon, asks how she knows her name. Hearing this, the main character thought that if the boss himself was doing this, then the order had been given personally, and she wondered why he'd gone along with it. He then suggested kidnapping her, because she wanted to be a part of the kidnapping too. Hearing this, Gilhart smiled and the assistant tells the head that this girl is crazy and asks if they should take care of her. He objects and says that it is not necessary and suggests taking another look at her, because this girl has golden eyes and wheat-colored hair that radiates a soft silver light. Gilhart claims that it has been a long time since he saw such perfection, and then says that they are just looking for a person, and she just fits the description perfectly. The man approaches the miss and asks to take advantage of her generous offer and kidnap her. He then offers to go with them. The gentleman smiled and said that this is exactly what he told them, because he couldn't imagine why they needed an old man like him. The girl says that she also told them almost the same thing and asked them why they took such a useless person like her, and they answered that there are no useless people in this world, and the life of every person has its own value. Hearing this, the main character thought that she did not understand what kind of strange situation this was, and observing the light, casual conversation, she believed that they had really been kidnapped. Charlotte believes that they have gathered here more than one or two people and does not understand why they needed all these people. The lady recalls that they then said that they were looking for a person who fits her description and understands that she has a bad feeling. At this time, the head of the Black Moon enters the room and asks for a moment of their attention, and then apologizes for keeping them waiting. The man first thanks them for their cooperation and offers to move on to an explanation of what is happening, and then asks if any of them have a pet, a large dog or a cow. The girl says that she has a cat at home and the other girl says that she has a dog. Gilhart explains that they should simply be aware that this situation may resemble the situation with their pet. While he may have a fiery temper, he won't attack his owner or bite him, so they have nothing to worry about. The gentleman suggests that for their safety, they stand in a single row. At this time, the main character saw Dan and then hid behind a woman, and she became curious about what was wrong with him because she understood that he looked completely unimportant, but felt that his mana was in a calm state. The man checked each person and placed an eye patch with a golden stone over one of their eyes. However, not a single girl was suitable, and it was the protagonist's turn. Dan looked at the lady who had closed her eyes. Gilhart asked if he was sure it wasn't her and suggested trying on a blindfold. The gentleman suggests that the next people wear a blindfold and apologizes for the inconvenience. Charlotte understands that he is looking for people who are similar to her. The girl looked at the Dan who grabbed the man and asked if he was a teacher. The grandfather insisted he was a wonderful young man, and his assistant said they would choose him today. At this time, the main character does not understand what he is doing because the grandfather does not look like her at all, because he is a man. The gentleman suggests sending everyone else home and apologizing to them for the inconvenience. Dan tells the man, calling him teacher, that he can't sleep. The helpers ask people to keep all this a secret and take these gifts with them, and also wish them a safe journey. When the lady was about to leave, the head of the Black Moon turned to her and said that it was strange because he thought it would be her. And then he said that they had been looking for one person for a very long time. The man says that of all the people they chose, she fit the description best, but it seems he was mistaken. He believes the grandfather will stay here for a while and then they will escort him safely home. Gilhart tells her not to worry because they won't do anything weird to him, and then explains that the leader sleeps very poorly, so he needs someone to tell him stories so he can fall asleep. And if they didn't do that, he wouldn't be able to sleep at all. The lady asks why he's telling her this. The guy replies that he's probably just really sad she wasn't chosen, then wishes her a safe journey and says that if she wants to report them to security, she's free to do so, as she understands it won't change anything anyway. When leaving, the main character threw away a bag of gold coins. A lady walks into a store and the salesperson says that they are already closed today. The girl asks if they know who the Archmaid Charlotte is. The woman claims she certainly does, but then asks how they could not know such a great person. The main character asks if there are rumors about Charlotte's 5 students and asks them to tell her if they know anything. The lady says that her first student is the Emperor of Marvel, and 6 years ago they only talked about him because the Emperor gathered the magicians of the Empire, and with their help he invaded Klaus. The Emperor announced that he was looking for one person, and she thought that this would lead to war and the whole country was talking about nothing else, and then he asks where the lady was at that time that she did not know about this incident. The woman says it's just a rumor, and then reveals that the second student is the guardian of the Pantheon. She tried to resurrect someone, and as a result of casting a spell, she destroyed half the sacred forest. If she hadn't stopped her research, she likely would have destroyed the entire world. The third disciple, Dan Monte, the leader of the Black Moon, is simply a creature of evil. And it seems something happened 8 years ago that drove him mad. Before that, he was wreaking havoc across the continent, and now he's moved to Klaus. And then he asks if all the fuss in this city isn't because of him. The lady says nothing is being said about the 4th student, and she heard something about the 5th student who is said to have fallen into eternal sleep. He went into the devil's domain, where no one goes, just to find someone, and he died there. The man asks Lady Lyson in surprise how she got in and what she is doing here at such a late hour. The girl turns to the Archduke and he tells the servants that everything is fine and they can go. The main character reports that she did not hear any rumors, and even if we take into account that she was in the village, the fact that she did not hear anything about these incidents or about the countless rumors means only one thing: that he personally had a hand in this. Jeffrey agrees with her and says she's right, because it was him. He then explains that her students aren't little children who need her constant care and protection, and then reminds her that she herself said she wanted to start a new life. The Archduke informs her that, having learned of her desire, he too wants her to live for himself. The girl asks for an answer to just one question and asks if any of these rumors are true. The man says whether they are true or not, she should not worry about it, because she believes that this is all an event of days gone by, and there is no point in resorting to magic for the sake of such nonsense. The gentleman claims that she knows that in her condition she cannot use magic, and the girl claims that this is precisely why she is now using her fists and asks him nicely, and he be so kind as to answer as necessary. Jeffrey shows a pile of papers and says that this is all the information he has collected about the activities of her students over the past 8 years. Charlotte tells him not to mock her, but the gentleman insists he's not mocking her. He's simply putting everything in order. The main character doesn't understand what these scoundrels have been doing all this time, since there is a lot of material on them. Jeffrey says he was a little surprised too because he had to work hard to keep her from finding out, and then apologizes and explains that he's looking for a way out. The girl asks what he's talking about. The gentleman replies that it's about the curse and says it hasn't disappeared. She tried to kill herself without telling them because she knew the truth would hurt them. The Archduke says that he will not allow this to happen, and no matter how long it takes, he will find a way out and asks not to worry about anything until then. Charlotte says she really did say she wanted to live a new life, but that doesn't mean she'll abandon her students to their fate. He says he knows all this new life, and talk of finding true love is just an excuse to avoid showing up to his students. The gentleman suggests simply telling him the truth, frankly and without embellishment. Meanwhile, the lady realized she'd been telling him the truth. Sylvan turns to His Excellency and says that he does not know why he does not answer and does not leave the room, but now he will have to personally go to him to make sure that everything is okay. When the man saw the gentleman, he asked in surprise if he had been attacked last night. He replied that the world's greatest magician was coming to him, and his life still flowed through his veins. The aide explains that he meant the attacker's life and that they must interrogate him immediately and find out who gave the order. The Archduke orders him to stop shouting and then tells him to leave because he wants to be alone. At this time, the gentleman thought that she hated him again and thought that it would be wonderful if there were only them in this world. The maid tells Lady Arya that she got up early today and then says that she came to put fresh flowers in her room and asks if she should bring her some warm tea. The lady thanks and refuses and then says that she will go out for a short while on personal business and let her tell this to Rum and Judy if they ask. The maid asks if she's going alone and then says she'll tell the butler to prepare the carriage. But the lady refuses, saying there's no need. The maid thought that this was strange and asked if something had happened. The main character believes she lived too carefree and can't understand how she could have believed that just because she left her will in her will, they would easily accept her death. After all, she never imagined how difficult it would be for these children without her. Charlotte believes that, albeit slowly, her mana rings are gradually being restored. She thinks the children should know what happened and accept her death, since she has disappeared from this world and they have the strength to live without her. The lady believes that the first thing she will do is stop these kidnappings since they were here last night, and assumes that most likely they have already left this place and, of course, left no traces. The girl became interested in how she should track them down and where they could have gone. Charlotte saw the man and thought that they were still here, and she became interested in how Klaus's troublemakers behaved, but she realized that this was too strange. The main character turns to the young man and says that she thinks she is lost, and then explains that she was just looking for the Louisiana Memorial Park. The guy grabs the girl by the shoulders and says that she came just in time and calls her a sweet victim who came into their hands. Suddenly, a man in a black cloak appears and attacks him. Charlotte wondered why he had suddenly appeared and thought he must have been following her. She turned to the man and asked if he was the man who had been following her for the past few days. Hearing this, the man in black clothes disappeared. The guy saw a man lying on the ground screaming and asking what was going on. The lady explains that she was just passing by and saw an unconscious man. The young man asks why she doesn't come with them and tell them the details. At this time, the main character thought that she should leave, but nevertheless she made up her mind and went. The girl was tied up and strangers said that they were lucky today because they could get a good amount of money for them. The man asks what's wrong with Darren and why he hasn't come to his senses. Charlotte realized something was wrong. It was obvious these people weren't from the Black Moon. Suddenly, she heard a shout that they were greeting Mr. Dan Monte. The gentleman yells, asking if everything is ready, and also wonders why they're moving so slowly. He tells them to get off their asses and get to work, because they need to be on their way already. The man who was sitting next to the girl says that it was Dan Monte and believes that he was really kidnapped by members of the Black Moon. The man says that everything is correct, because they are the Black Moon from Marvel. And this man is the third student of the Archmage Charlotte, Mr. Dan Monte, and therefore suggests not even thinking about escaping. At this time, the main character thought that it turns out that they are pretending to be him and his order and therefore committing all sorts of atrocities. Charlotte saw the men dragging someone, and she recognized him as Dan. The bandit offered to throw him in with the others, considering them lucky to have gained another man without any effort. The main character doesn't understand what's wrong with him and assumes his people forgot about him and left him there. The man, screaming, orders them to move because they need to get out of here before the guards arrive. The lady looked at the guy and thought that he had simply fallen asleep. The lady remembered that when Julian brought the boy, she said that no matter what she did with him, he did not move, and it seemed to her that he really had died. And then she asked whether she should throw him out. The teacher says that he did not die and tells him not to talk about the fact that she will throw the person away like an unnecessary thing. Charlotte says Julian is an adult and therefore asks her to take care of Dane, as the child suffers from great fear. The girl says that during his rare sleep, he looks like he's dead only because he usually can't sleep at all. The robber suggests tying up Dan because he believes that the man has woken up. Meanwhile, the main character addresses him and tells him that people posing as him and his order are standing right in front of him, and asks what he's planning to do. She asks why he allowed them to tie him up, and she wonders if he doesn't understand what's going on there. The girl asks if he is just going to observe for a while to properly assess the situation. The robbers inform the master that they are ready, and then the people are put into the cart. After a while, the man shouts that they have arrived and tells people to come inside. Charlotte thinks this place looks like a prison, and the people who met them greeted Mr. Monty. The lady realizes it's a huge underground prison, and she thought they were a small organization of criminals imitating the order. The lady believes that if their criminal activity in Avent has reached such a scale, it means that there is a much more influential figure behind them. A man screams and begs Mr. Monty to let him go because he has a sick child waiting at home, and he's the only one around. Monty tells him to shut up, then seduces him, saying whether the child dies or not isn't his problem. So he suggests hiding in the far corner of the cell and shutting up. The man says that he only managed to save up money for the medicine, and if he doesn't take it, the child might not survive. And he's only 5 years old and he might die without the medicine, and therefore he asks to let him go to him and then begs. Monty tells them to open it, but at this time the girl does not understand what he has planned. The man thanks the gentleman but suddenly feels a strong blow. The mercenary claims he told him to shut up and sit quietly in his cage and claims it's his own fault for disobeying. He asks what to do with them if they're spineless slugs who only obey when they're writhing in pain. The robber grabs the man and asks if he really thought he would let him go because of her snotty story, and then says that she will have to remind him who he is. The main character turns to Dan with her thoughts and says that if he doesn't do something sooner. Meanwhile, the man shouts, telling everyone to perk up their ears and remember that he's Dan Monte. But suddenly he hears laughter and asks who dared laugh at such a moment. The guy in black clothes asks for forgiveness and says that it is his fault, and then explains that it is just incredibly funny so much that he could not control himself. And at that moment, the chains from his hands broke. The bandit screams, asking what's going on, believing the shackles were made of dread steel. Dan asks who gave them permission to commit such atrocities while pretending to be them, then claims they're too insignificant and uses magic to envelop the bandits. Monty says that they weren't careful and no one could track them to this place, and then asks who is behind this and who ordered them to commit these crimes. At this point, the mercenary couldn't say anything, only writhing in pain. The master smiled and asked if he hadn't said that useless slugs only obey when they're exhausted from pain. Dan turns to the mister and then breaks his shackles and asks if he wants to hit him for hitting him, but the man refuses. The robber asks if they are complete idiots and why the hell they are standing there like statues and suggests that his servants move and grab this man. The mercenary tells the master that their bodies are not moving. Gilhart asks the guys if they took on too much when they decided to pretend to be such a powerful order as their Black Moon, especially considering that they have neither powers nor abilities. The assistant asks what to do with them, as he thinks this isn't Marvel and where such a magnificent warrant could have come from. He orders them to seize everyone, as it seems this is their only refuge. Dan grabs the man by the shirt and asks who ordered this operation and who's behind it. He replies that he was simply doing what he was told, because he was told they could carry out their business without interference. The gentleman asks who he is talking about now. A man with red hair approaches Miss, says they've met again, and asks if he can help her untie her shackles. He asks if she's been kidnapped again and assumes it's some kind of hobby. The robber says that he sprinkled the earth with the blood of your teacher. He was going to revive him in this world, but he cannot find it anywhere. Hearing this, the man does not understand what is happening and thinks that he is saying this spell, and the main character understands that this is a demonic language. She pulled out her sword and hit the stick that the robber was holding. The mercenary claims that he will tell them everything, but at this time the girl thought that his mana was unstable. The assistant turns to the leader and says that this is some kind of madness and suggests getting everyone out of here because the entire building could collapse. Gilhart turns to the lady and says that of course he understands that she is a special girl, and then asks if she really wants to die there, and therefore asks her to go to a safe place because he believes that her curiosity can destroy her, and therefore she must leave immediately and run as far away from here as possible. Charlotte tells him to take all the people and try to get them out as discreetly as possible. And when he gets out, He should not forget to take all these scum with him, and she will stay there for a while. Sylvan asks the lady what she's talking about and if she's crazy. She replies that she'll explain everything later. The man insists that she doesn't understand the situation they're in and believes there's nothing she can do to help. The Lord offers to take a look and then asks what she can do with the Archmage of the Six Circles who has lost control of himself. He does not know why the leader entered this state, but he understands that now no one can stop him, and if she values her life, he implores her to run from here as far as possible. The main character asks if he's suggesting she leave this idiot to her fate. He claims all he can do now is wait for the leader to calm down and come out of this state, and tells her to stop being stubborn. However, the girl objects and tells him to let her go before she hits him. The man with red hair says that it seems like their eyes just met, and that means that as soon as he counts to 3, she should run. And if he dies, he asks to pray for the repose of his soul. The lady tells him to stop talking nonsense because he's had enough, and then she goes up to Dan and grabs his hand. She tells him to stop yelling and breathe calmly. Charlotte says that he is very sensitive to mana right now, and therefore does not use magic and simply suggests leaving slowly and quietly so that this child can calm down. The main character recalls that one day a woman called her and said that she was looking forward to the day when she could meet her. The lady offers to report the situation, and the woman says that it is all her fault, because she committed a great sin and the blood of demons flows in the veins of this child. The lady says she knew she had to get rid of him right away, but now he's turned into a terrible demon who craves the red liquid and the pain of people. She wishes he had never been born into this world, and therefore asks him to have mercy on her and kill this child. The Archmage claims that there are no children in this world who should not have been born and asks if she doesn't see that this child is crying. At this point, the main character realized she couldn't see the life in his eyes and felt like he was truly about to explode. She knew that since he'd grown up, this had never happened, and she wondered if he was really suffering that much. Charlotte wonders if she can calm him down in this state, and if not, then she has no other choice but to. The lady grabs Dan by the shirt and mentally asks him to remember her. The protagonist thought about their first meeting with him, calling him Sweet Child. She'd been told his name was Dan and that he was born with great power. However, she sees that he's not yet ready to control her and asks if it was hard for him. The Archmage says that until his body and mind become strong, he asks to allow her to support him and help him in everything, and then says that if he is with her and close by, he will no longer suffer. The lady claims that next to her, his heart will be calm and he will not have to fear his strength because she is 1,000,000 times stronger than him and can stop any of his attacks, and therefore he will have no reason to cry because he will not hurt anyone again. The girl hugs the boy and says that let him remember this flow of great mana, this voice, and this warmth well. At this time, the main character thought that if there was still sadness left in him that she had instilled in him during their first meeting, and when she touched the guy, she became interested in whether it worked. Dan bowed his head to the girl, and she thought that he looked a bit like a big dog and told the baby not to be sad. The man asks why now it seems to him that the tunnel is collapsing due to the blast wave. Sylvan reports that everyone has left and they are the only ones left. He then turns to Miss, and she says she asked him to stop yelling. The man asks how he can avoid screaming in such a situation since she said that magic cannot be used. When the guys saw the gentleman, they were scared because they didn't understand why he was so angry. But the main character says that everything is fine because she's nearby. At this time, the girl thought that if she could get through to him, she would be able to calm him down with the mana that she had. And then she went up to him and called him a child and invited him to come to her. Watching her, the men thought she was crazy, wondering where she'd seen someone who looked like a child. But when the gentleman approached her, they realized she was addressing him. Sylvan looked at the gentleman in surprise and became interested in who this girl was. Lottie thinks that this is great, and reflects on the fact that despite the noise around him, his attention is completely focused on her, and therefore he believes that the seal has not yet been completely destroyed. The lady turns to Gilhart and then informs him that he can now use magic and check if anyone is left here, and then quickly leave from there, and also reminds him not to forget to take this man with him since he is still alive. The girl turns to the other students and says that now they will come out of here and create a magical barrier at the entrance to the cave. Lottie says she thinks a 2-phase Frizen spell will be enough, and once it reaches its peak, they'll have to maintain the spell's power at level 4. To prevent the shockwave from what's happening from escaping, she suggests they use more magic. The boy addresses the Black Moon's head, who tells them to do as she says, and let them both go out first. At that moment, he thought about how even in Marvel, not many mages know about the Phazon spell, and she explained its use in such detail. Gilhart asks how she is. Miss replies that she'll stay there for a little while and lead their leader out, and therefore suggests not to worry and just leave. The man objects and says they'll follow right after them, but the girl insists he leave. He says he understands and suggests they don't linger and go straight out. Meanwhile, he's thinking that this is the last one and wonders if everything will be okay with them. Charlotte grabbed the leader by the hand and said that when a magician takes his last breath, his soul, which is stored in mana, fills the world, and therefore the same thing will happen to her. And she assumes that most likely he will not be able to remember everything that she tells him now. The girl says that she hopes that his subconscious will remember this, and this knowledge will make him even stronger. Lottie explains that everything has a beginning and an end, and every person's life is filled with encounters and separations. These life experiences leave their memories and precious memories, and she wishes she too would remain just a precious memory in his life. The main character claims that even if she is not next to him, everything will be fine and he is no longer a little child, because she believes that he has learned a lot and can do a lot. And now that she is no longer there are many good people left next to him. Charlotte touches the leader's face and says that this is why everything will be fine with him, because now he has become so strong that he no longer needs a teacher. Hearing this, the gentleman grabs the girl by the hand and says that he needs her and says that he is not at all okay, and calls her teacher and then begins to cry. When the guy hugged the girl, she thought that he was acting like a stupid child. But at that moment, an explosion occurred, and people saw that the entire tunnel had collapsed. Gilhart doesn't understand why they didn't come out then, but he thinks that the leader definitely survived, and he became curious about what happened to the girl, since it seems that she is also a magician and also a very strong one. Suddenly, the girl leading the leader emerged. She says he either lost consciousness or simply fell asleep, and a man in black was watching them. The man says that this is the last place she was and that all traces of the teacher and her mana disappear here. But he does not understand why she decided to come to this cold and lonely place. Dan screams and calls for the teacher because he wants to tell her something, but the ghost says that she is dead, Charlotte Eleanor, and he will never see her again. The guy says that the leader hasn't slept for so long in a long time, and his friend thinks that it's because he lost consciousness this time and asks if this isn't too much, since he thinks that these are necessary precautions, because one movement from the leader would be enough and this entire room would turn to dust. The leader of the Black Moon turns to the guys and asks if they are here again, and then states that the leader is not a monkey in a zoo, and therefore suggests that they stop coming here because the leader needs to rest. Jody turns to the main character and asks her to tell her what she did yesterday alone all day. And her brother says that he is also interested, because the butler said that when she arrived, she was all covered in dust and dirt and looked unwell. Arya says that she has to tell them something and that they should stay away from her for a while because something is going on, and she doesn't know anything about it. The main character understands that she cannot expose these carefree children to danger, and she must first find out everything and gather enough information. Judith asks in surprise where she got such thoughts, and also asks if she doesn't like the capital and if she wants to return home. Jerome believes that since they arrived in the capital, something strange has been happening to her, and she is always immersed in her thoughts and then asks what is bothering her, and if she does not say anything, they will worry about her. At this time, the butler enters the room and tells my lady that she must go outside and see this with her own eyes. The girl saw a carriage that brought a lot of flowers and the Archduke who came to pick her up. Sitting in the carriage, the main character asks if he has gone crazy and what kind of performance he is putting on there. And the gentleman asks if she's still angry with him. The girl insists that he stop and asks why he brought all these knights. Luister says he had a little mishap, and the first thing he did was rush to her to tell her everything. The lady asks what happened to Togo and whether she should praise him for it. The gentleman says he'll be very grateful. Lottie says she has no time for his jokes, as they've got a big problem, and she thinks the demons that haunt Doom have returned. Hearing this, the Archduke asks in surprise if she has any evidence, and then asks if this has anything to do with the collapse of the cave and event. Lottie says that as she thought, he already knows, because those involved in the incident have already been captured by the Order of the Black Moon. So they need to conduct an investigation, and then asks why he sent a man to follow her. Luister, surprised, asks who she's talking about, and she asks if he definitely didn't send her. The man insists that if he had decided to do something like that, he wouldn't have trusted anyone but himself. At this point, the protagonist realized it wasn't Jeffrey who sent him, and she wondered who it was. She thought about how she'd have to catch him next time, and no matter how insignificant it might seem, she couldn't let anything slide now. Lottie says it's already noon and she has an appointment. Charlotte said that when their leader wakes up, They should tell him that she will be waiting for him tomorrow at noon in the nest of wings on the blue square. Gilhart says that she asked to tell him, but did not say anything about the fact that they could not accompany him. And the leader never cared whether they followed him or not, and believes that he probably does not even know that they are here, since after waking up, he does not seem like himself at all. At this point, the girl tells him not to even think about interfering in her affairs under any circumstances, and therefore asks him to return home. The Archduke, surprised, asks if she really plans to meet him. Lottie tells him they've met before, and he asks, surprised, if the guy recognized her. She explains that they met face to face for the first time yesterday, but he probably won't remember anything because of the explosion. Hearing about the explosion, Jeffrey, surprised, asks if that means that yesterday's destruction was caused by the explosion of Dainamonte, and he also asks the girl if she used magic yesterday. The main character explains that she knows better than anyone what state her body is in, and therefore believes that now he should worry not about her, but about death. The Archduke asks if he reveals her. Will she reveal herself to the other students? And then says that one glance was enough for him to recognize her. The girl says that because he is with her, no matter how she looks, he always recognizes her in any guise. And at that time, she thought that, of course, the most powerful swordmaster of the continent must be so perceptive and sensitive to mana. Mana is proof of a mage's life. Lottie understands that even if they recognize her, they will never be able to confirm their suspicions. After all, her mana is now so weak and unstable that it can't even be compared to what she was endowed with in her previous life. Charlotte reminds him that he said that he came to tell her about a problem, and the gentleman says that it is such an insignificant problem and it concerns her first student. The lady asks if he is talking about Carcillion. He replies that he is talking about the Emperor of Marvel and then says that he has decided to declare war on Klaus. The man smiled and said that on such wonderful sunny days, the teacher always said that this is the best weather for a falling meteorite. Charlotte reflects on the fact that she has lived a long life and has had to make choices countless times, and she thought that in most cases she chose the right path, and thinks about whether she made the right decision when she met her death. The main character reflects on the fact that for some reason she feels like she hasn't thought everything through properly and understands that she can't appear before Dan as Charlotte Eleanor. The girl approaches the leader and says that she is Aria Lyson and then shakes his hand and he says that he is Dan Monte. At this point, the young lady doesn't understand why he's staring at her like that and thinks he might drill a hole in her head with his gaze. Then she says there are so many people on the first floor and no one here. The leader announces that he has asked everyone to leave. Hearing this, the girl wonders how long it has been since he arrived. Then he says that she understands he has a lot of questions for her and asks how long he plans to hold her hands. Dan replies that he was simply afraid that she would run away from him, but the lady insists that she will not run away and then asks if he really remembered what happened yesterday. The man explains that he doesn't remember the details and then asks if she saved him then. Hearing this, Lottie jumped up and when she looked out the window, she saw a man watching them. He asks if she's going to grab him, and the lady objects, saying that he should be the one grabbing him. The main character does not understand what it was because she just felt an incredibly strong presence and thinks that it was as if it was screaming that he was here, and understands that a lot of time has passed since she felt something like this. Charlotte believes that if it was somehow connected with death, she would have found out immediately. However, she thinks that if she grabs him, she will know for sure. Dan tells the stranger in black to stop. Seeing this, Gilhart says that he will follow the girl and let them go to the leader, and if there is city security there, then let them not aggravate the situation. The leader of the Black Moon became curious about what was going on and who the leader was pursuing. At this time, the main character thought that she would first finish this story with Dan, and then, after finding out the situation in Marvel, meet with Carcillion. Lottie realizes that she doesn't know how everything turned out this way, but her quiet life could end because she can't get rid of this strange feeling. Gilhart asks Miss what happened and what she's doing here. She asks, surprised, why he's following her. At this time, Dan tells the stranger that it is better not to waste his strength aimlessly, and it is better to immediately allow him to be captured, and also asks why he was watching them and was clearly hostile. However, the stranger did not answer, and the leader said that he understood that he was not going to answer. The man in black clothes saw that the leader wanted to hit him, so he jumped up and quickly ran away. And at that time, Dan thought that he was some kind of strange guy, and if he wanted to escape, he would have chosen a better tactic. The leader realizes it doesn't look like he intended to fight him, since he's a mage and, judging by his strange smell, his magic isn't working properly. He then uses magic to bind him and asks who he is. Dan heard nothing in response, only saw stone jowls that suddenly appeared and resembled animals. The assistants didn't understand what they were, but at that moment, the man in black ran away, and the leader noticed. At this time, Gilhart turns to the main character and says that he understands that this may sound strange, but after what happened yesterday, he cannot stop thinking about her. The man says that he knows absolutely nothing about her, but he feels that if he doesn't say it now, he will regret it and wants to ask only one thing, and then asks if she wants to become a new member of their Black Moon. The head of the Black Moon saw a flicker, and at that time the main character went to pursue the man in the black cloak. When she jumped off the roof, he held out his hands to her. The girl says she doesn't know what he was trying to do, but apparently he wasn't running away from her and knew she was already close. Lottie wonders who sent him and why he is following her. But having heard nothing, she realizes that these questions are pointless, and then asks if he can summon the darkness and control it, since she believes that this is the same as revealing her essence. The girl approached him and removed his hood, but she still couldn't see his face. She said that even after so many years, there are people who are ready to follow death, and then asked him what he knew about her and whether he had anything to do with what happened yesterday. Charlotte claims she doesn't know how much he knows, but wonders why he doesn't think twice about revealing all the information. The main character saw silver hair and said that he could do something like that, but at that moment the stranger ran away. And at that time, the girl thought that this couldn't be because he couldn't be here. And the man in black clothes blurred, and she realized that she couldn't see well because she started to stagger and her head hurt and she fell. The guy tells the leader that they have the situation under control, and then reports that some buildings and the road were damaged, but no one was seriously injured. Dan praises them for doing a good job. At this time, the knights turn to Dan Monty and say that they are again causing havoc in Event, and believe that this time they even summoned the darkness and asks how he dared to do this in Klaus, because he believes that even if he is an archmage, Marvel can't do something like that. The knight says that this was to be expected since he is only half a demon, but the demonic fluid always makes itself known. Hearing this, the master became angry and asked what he dared to say. Hearing this, the assistant asked the leader to let him take care of them. The guy tells the knights that this man saved them, and if it weren't for these mages, these monsters would have maimed them or even killed them. Then he says they killed him after it was all over, and now they're blaming the innocent. The man claims that these three saved them and then asks why the security arrived so late, and he wonders if they are even doing their job. The assistant suggests leaving this place before the situation gets more complicated and asks what the leader will say. At this time, the main character realized that the man who was following her was Evan. She asks what is happening. The man doesn't take off his mask and tells Charlotte that he's not Evan, and the girl screams and says that she's not Charlotte either, and asks what happened to him. At this time, the guy took the girl in his arms, but the Archduke appeared and said that he took his hands off her. The main character thought that no one was hurt and wondered why he was acting like that. Jeffrey insisted he would never hurt her, and the lady explained that she wasn't talking about herself. The Archduke turns to the guy and says that this is how he learned to behave, and then he takes the sword and the fight begins. Charlotte asks what they are doing here together because she thinks that they are not children anymore. And Evan leaves and tells Charlotte that they will meet in Marvel. Evan was following her. Serval and believes that he figured it out from the very beginning. The Archduke reports that he too knew it was him, and that his whereabouts were unknown. But he was last seen 4 years ago in the mountains in Marvel. There was a great commotion in the mountains, leading to rumors of his death. The gentleman explains that this is why they have no information about what he has been doing for the last 4 years, and they will track him down because they believe that he could not have gone far. Charlotte says that there is no need because he is the most capable among her students, and if that child decided to hide, then finding him will be very difficult, and therefore they do not need to look for him because he will come himself. The lady doesn't understand why she didn't recognize Evan right away, and thinks it's only because he hid his face. The girl believes that she could not recognize him because the mana around him is completely different, and there are only 2 reasons why the mana unique to each magician can change. If a person loses it, like she did, or if you touch it, you can't touch anything. Charlotte tells Jeffrey that she needs to go to Marvel. The servant informs His Majesty that a reply has arrived from Klaus, and the Emperor says that it has arrived faster than he thought. The man reminds them that he himself said that if they don't respond by today, he will send a meteorite at them and asks if they are declaring war. His Majesty asks why, as he believes they're sending a delegation to discuss matters peacefully. The servant asks if he truly thinks the man Gilhart met has any connection to her. The Emperor believes that if he is convinced of this, he should personally meet this man. The young man approaches His Excellency and asks if he sees that there were demons of darkness in the event. He believes that the knights must be immediately assembled and the palace informed of what happened to receive instructions on further action, and therefore His Excellency must first gather the knights. The main character tells the leader that it's okay that he ran away because he protected the people. The girl claims that this is wonderful. Dan asks his grandfather if he wants to tell him anything, and the Archduke replies that he has nothing and says that he is terrible and will never forgive him. The guy asks in surprise what he did, and the gentleman explains that he was hoping to get information from him about what happened in Avent and wants him to hand over the criminals to them. Jeffrey believes that this is Klaus's business and their actions here are limited, so he offers cooperation because he thinks that it would be nice if they quickly settled everything with joint efforts before the situation worsens. The gentleman believes that then they will all be able to breathe freely. At this point, the main character tells the maid that she simply wanted to change. Hearing this, the maid, surprised, says that she is the only lady close to His Excellency, and therefore they must serve her best. Charlotte thought that it seemed they had all gotten it wrong, and the maid wonders why Venny hasn't brought the jewelry box yet and asks my lady if she could wait a little while. Lottie thinks that she needs to run away from here, and when she went outside, she thought that for the first time she felt that someone was following her. The girl recalls that when she arrived in Aventa, it means Evan was there from the very beginning and began following her before his arrival, and she simply didn't notice him. However, she wonders when he found out who she really was. The main character saw a man with dark hair who asks if he is dreaming, and how it happened that in the gloomy estate of the eternally single Archduke, who has practically no servants, a beautiful little lady is walking around freely. The woman claims that she does not look like an uninvited guest like her and asks if she works for the Archduke. Charlotte asks who she is, and the stranger comes closer to her and says that she has beautiful eyes. Dan suddenly appears and stands in front of the main character. The woman says there are more guests here. Jeffrey opens the door and asks to come into the room. The dark-haired girl says that since the Archduke declines all her invitations to the palace, she decided to come to him herself. Charlotte asks why she arrived without security. Miss claims that Klaus is under the Archduke's protection and therefore believes this is the safest place on Earth. The main character thought that the young girl who inherited Klaus's throne 5 years ago was her, and she was sure that she had already seen this child. The girl asks the Archduke if it is possible that he is leading a reclusive and single life because of this young lady, since he sent Dan Monty away, but she was allowed to stay and her identity was revealed to her, and she believes that this means that the master trusts her completely. The little girl with blue eyes says that it is possible that the girl that the Marvel Emperor is looking for is Arya Listen. Gilhart turns to the leader and says that he was looking for him and then asks where the young lady is and if they weren't together. Dan asks what's going on, and the assistant says that it seems that the girl is close to Archduke Louis and asks who she is. The master objects and says they're not close. The Black Moon leader says he's actually found out some information and then reveals that this girl belongs to the aristocratic Klaus family and is the only offspring of Count Lysen, but hasn't yet inherited the title of Countess. Gilhart says he thought that if she doesn't belong to any guild, why not become a member of their Black Moon? However, he understands that she is an aristocrat Klaus, but given her outstanding abilities, she definitely has some connection to Marvel. The man says that he has already informed His Majesty Carcillion about the girl, and if he has any information upon hearing this, Dan grabs him by the shirt and asks who he told. The guy with red hair answers that the Emperor Carcillion about the girl, and then asks in surprise if he did something wrong. Milady with black hair says that Carcillion is looking for Arya Lisen, and she would not call what he is doing simply looking, but she does not know if he has senile dementia or if he has simply gone crazy because he said that if they immediately give him Arya, he will blow up Klaus's imperial palace and turn it into torpedoes. The lady says that when a person is ready to declare war over such a trifle, it means he is definitely crazy. And if they had not received an official letter, they would have thought that a madman was behind this terrible act. The Archduke says that he certainly would not have done this, and even if he had destroyed the palace, they would have built a new one. Meanwhile, the main character was thinking about what it meant he declared this war because of her. And Jeffrey offered to listen because he really was going to tell her all the details. The guest says that no matter what, they found the person he was looking for, and who would have thought that Arya is a close friend of the Archduke, and therefore she has a lot of questions for her. But since they do not have time, she will get straight to the point. The woman approaches the Archduke and orders that Arya Lisen be included in the delegation they are sending to Marvel. The girl with black hair says that since the young lady is also a citizen of Klaus, she is sure that Arya does not want war. And if Marvel has honor and conscience, then by sending them the girl, they will achieve even better conditions than they originally expected. Jeffrey asks if she's suggesting she sell someone out for profit. She objects, saying they wouldn't sell her as they'd only send her as part of a delegation visiting Marvel. The lady says that if Arya, who will be part of the delegation, does not return to Klaus or is harmed, then in that case they will enter into war, and although she makes the decision, his opinion in this case plays a decisive role. The guest approaches Lady Lyson and asks if she knows why the Marvel Emperor is looking for her. She replies that she truly knows nothing. The woman says that this may seem unexpected to the young lady, but she wants her to be the one to make the decision, and asks if she is ready to join the delegation that is going to Marvel and prevent the war. Charlotte asks Dan how long he's been waiting. He replies no. She says she knows it'll come as a surprise and then announces she's going to Marvel. The leader says that he will go with her, but the girl objects and says that he cannot and asks not to look at her like that. And at that time, she thought that the day when she herself admits to them who she is will never come. Lottie tells Dan that she knows who he's thinking about when he looks at her. The main character reflects on the fact that if she becomes Charlotte Eleanor again, then in the end, nothing will change, and then says that the problem is that she is an Arya. The leader asks if he can call her Miss Arya, and she agrees, saying he can call her whatever he likes. He asks when she's leaving, and she replies, tomorrow morning. Charlotte claims that even if he looks at her like that, he still won't be able to go with her, and then says that she wanted to ask him for a favor and asks if he could listen to her. At this point, the Archduke tells his guest that he cannot escort her further. She says this is unexpected and seems very dear to him, and she even thought he would try to dissuade her or go with her. Jeffrey says she wouldn't have listened anyway, because she has very beautiful eyes. The lady agrees, saying that few people have such golden eyes as hers, and that they strongly remind one of someone, like the Archmage. Charlotte. The woman asks if it's possible that Emperor Marvel is looking for Arya because she has some connection to Charlotte. He replies that he doesn't know, and the woman says he won't tell her anything anyway, so she'll stop asking. The girl says that who knows, because she assumes that maybe this crazy emperor is looking for people with golden eyes like Charlotte Eleanor's, because there are a huge number of her crazy fanatics in this city. And therefore, she thinks that His Excellency understands this better than others, since he is one of her fanatics, and asks if this is true. The woman says that she can only hope that there is a little space in their Archduke's head to take care of Klaus. Jeffrey doesn't understand what to do since there is no more space. More than 70 years ago, His Majesty said that let the princess and the prince go around, because he will fulfill the wish of the winner of the test, and then said that they can participate along with the teachers in order to show the best result. The Emperor asks whom the first Prince of the Rifts has chosen as his teacher. He explains that it's the Marquis of Fazio of Irmid, who was once the teacher of many outstanding magicians and is a great master from whom he can learn much. His Majesty turns to Rassilin and offers to tell him what he wants him to accomplish if he wins the competition. He replies that he wishes to take possession of the Stria region in the lands of Tabna. The first prince says that the reason is that this region is famous for its amethyst deposits. But recently, the mining of the stones has decreased, and he wants to help them find new ways of mining so that the lands of Tabin will prosper again. The Emperor says that he is endowed with a truly great mind and therefore wishes him victory, and then turns to Princess Maisie and asks which of the magicians will become her mentor. Suddenly, the second prince comes in and says that he also wants to take part in the trials. The Emperor says he doesn't look well and then asks if he's okay. The boy assures him he feels fine, and His Majesty announces that he will provide equal opportunities for all members of the imperial family, and asks the second prince of Carcillion who will be his tutor. At this time, when the aristocrats heard this, they realized that he could not control his mana, and they wondered if there would be a magician who would want to become his teacher, and they did not understand how, with his abilities, he could even participate in the test. The gentlemen think that the boy is too young or simply stupid, but they understand that perhaps the blood of the imperial family flows in him. Carcillion informs him that he has no teacher, and His Majesty asserts that he will not pass the trials without a teacher, and could even lose his life. He then asks if he still wants to participate. He replies that he does. The Emperor says that in that case, he should tell them his wish, and asks what he wants so much that he is even ready to sacrifice his life for it. The boy announces that he wants to become emperor. All the gentlemen heard this and were surprised, considering this to be unheard of impudence. His Majesty says that if he wins, he hopes to hear his wishes again. The first prince says that he believes that allowing his younger brother to participate in the test without a teacher is too cruel. And today, the most outstanding Marvel magicians have gathered in this place, and he asks why they don't try to find a mentor for their brother now. The Emperor says it's an excellent idea. Hearing this, Carcillion asks for them to wait, and his older brother says he's addressing everyone present because his brother is about to take part in the trial without a teacher, and many dangerous situations await him there. The young master claims that their origin is not important, and if there is a person there who is ready to become the teacher of his younger brother, Prince Mavril Carcillion, to ask him to come forward and tell them his name. The Emperor announces that he promises to generously reward anyone who responds to the invitation to become the second prince's mentor. The young gentleman claims that he can do it this way, and therefore believes that no one needs him, and at this time he realizes that no one has agreed. His Majesty reports that if no one responded, then he can do nothing and the second prince will participate without assistance. However, the main character says that she agrees and then apologizes for being a little late. Seeing Charlotte, the Lord was surprised because they knew that she had gone to Tarvin, and they did not understand how she had arrived here so quickly. Lottie suggests that everyone be quiet, and then says that all of them, Marvel's magicians, know no shame at all, and calls them pathetic nobodies, and then turns to His Highness Prince Carcillion and suggests calling her teacher. The lady tells the gentleman to raise his head and straighten his shoulders because from this moment on he becomes her first student. The young gentleman thought that he had not remembered the past for a long time and believed that this meant that something good was about to happen soon. The guy claims that he said he would try not to attract undue attention to himself and doesn't understand whether it's worth asking him to come down and thinks that most likely security is already on its way here. The gentleman smiled and asked what he was thinking about and whether when His Majesty said that he was going to meet, he meant a meeting in the class. Judy asks if she really has to go and the lady says she will bring them gifts. Jerome wonders why she suddenly needed to go to Marvel and that she would be accompanied by other knights. And he doesn't understand whether this means everything will be okay with her. The girl says she's sick of them and asks if they really can't admit defeat. She wants to catch them all and stuff them into a hive with the Aruru. At this point, the main character looked at the box and asked what it was. The gentleman replied that it was a mana potion, and it had been perfected to suit her needs and not cause any side effects. The man thinks that it would be better if she didn't need the potion at all, but they don't know what awaits her. Charlotte thanks him and says she'll use him wisely, and the Archduke asks if he can come with her. She objects, saying he should do his job here, as she needs to deal with the Marvel problem herself. And she's sorry Klaus got involved. At this time, the main character thought that when everything ends, she will have to somehow compensate for it. Jeffrey turns to the girl and says that he very often thought that it would be very good to tie her to him, so that she would have nothing else to do but look at him and only at him. Lottie asks if he wants to keep her on a leash like a dog and offers to try, then says that she will grind him into dust. At this time, the lady thought that he was stupid, and it seemed to her that something strange had been happening to him lately. And then she remembered that he really was a little strange from the very beginning. Charlotte reflects on how she should now focus on meeting Carcillion as Arya Leeson. And regarding the problem with Evan, she hopes her assumptions were wrong. When the main character arrived, she was met by a lady who said that she was glad to meet her, and then said that her name was Fenril Shrod. And she is the captain of the 3rd Knightly Order of the Empire, and this time she is heading the delegation, and it is an honor for her to meet her. Charlotte says her name is Arya Leeson and asks him to take care of her. Meanwhile, she's thinking about the Schroth family, a distinguished line of Klaus knights, and she doesn't understand why she's honored to meet her. The captain reports that His Majesty asked him to take good care of her, as she is dear to the Archduke. Hearing this, the lady objects, saying it seems there's some kind of misunderstanding. Fenril asks not to worry, because only she knows about this, and then says that even if a blade is brought to her throat, she will remove this secret at the cost of her life. At this point, a man approaches them and asks what secret she's talking about. The captain explains that it's her assistant, Jan Farinon. The man said he was glad to meet her and thought that this girl was very beautiful. The main character turns to the captain and asks if it was necessary to meet in the middle of the forest, since she believes that it would be more convenient to gather at the border in Telewania. Fenril explains that the thing is that Marvel is going to open a portal there and send magicians through it. And she doesn't know what they were planning, but they had no reason to refuse them this condition. And besides, they said that they would send magicians even without prior consent, and they have no manners at all. At this point, the girl doesn't understand why she felt nothing and why her sensitivity to mana has decreased so much. She understands that if the transport gate opens, it means high-level mages will arrive here. And if so, then she definitely knows them. At this moment, she realizes that someone is coming. Suddenly, people appeared who had come through the portal, and the assistant asked the captain if she knew any of them. She said she'd go greet them and suggested he stay with Lady Lyson. Jan says that judging by how surprised the captain was, very important people had arrived and asked Lady Lyson why. But when he looked back, he saw that the lady had disappeared somewhere. Fenrir says that who would have thought that the crown prince, who so rarely appears in public, would personally arrive here today, and then asks if it would be too hasty to assume that today's task is of utmost importance. The gentleman says that he will not deny it because he is Gerhard. Caden Marvel answers for the Marvel delegation and then asks if they have met before. The captain replies that they have never met, but she saw His Highness once and reports that she is Fenrir. Shradai is the captain who leads their group. His Highness says he is sure he has heard her name before. The lady says that if they had known that he would be the one arriving with the delegation, they would have prepared an official reception. And if they had reported that one of their people would be walking on their memorial statue, they would have also handled the situation differently. Gerhard reports that they in no way wanted to disturb Klaus's peace, as there was simply a small glitch with the movement magic and, be that as it may, it was only their mistake and therefore her guards are not to blame. The gentleman suggests getting straight to the point and asks that the other members of the delegation be reassigned, after which they will continue on their journey together. He then asks if they can first meet the young lady, the Count's daughter. And he mentions the Lyson Arya. At this time, the main character, running away, asks why they are pursuing her, and the assistant asks why she is running away from him. At this time, the girl thought that it was just worth their eyes to meet, and she instinctively ran, because she could not have imagined that he would pursue her with such zeal. Lottie thinks about how he's a bastard who could have easily grabbed her with magic, but instead he decided to chase her through the forest. And at this point, she doesn't understand why she even decided to run away, since they were supposed to meet. Charlotte reflects on how she simply didn't expect their meeting to happen so quickly, especially with Gerhard there. She doesn't understand what he was even thinking when he allowed himself, the Emperor, and the Crown Prince to leave the country at the same time and arrive with a delegation in Klaus. The lady, lost in her thoughts, did not notice the stick and hit herself on it, while at that time the assistant wanted to grab her but fell along with her. Milady asks when he plans to use his magic or conserve it. He replies that, unfortunately, he's not a mage, and just because he lives in Marvel doesn't mean he's one. Hearing this, the main character was surprised and became interested in what he was thinking about. And then she looked at the guy and saw a Carcillion. The captain turns to Lady Lyson and asks where she went, and then says that she has been looking for her for a long time and also asks what happened and why she looks like this. The girl replies that she just fell, and Fenrir asks if she is sure that this is all that happened. The lady explains that the man tried to help her, but they both ended up falling. The Emperor says that since they have already gathered, he then suggests that they set out on their journey, since he believes that it will be better if they arrive in Marvel before sunset. His Majesty tells his son that this young lady really does look like her, but not just similar. And if someone told him that it was her, he would believe it. The gentleman asks if he really thinks that this misses her. Carcillion objects and says that this is impossible because this girl cannot be a teacher, but he still believes that he should check it himself. Carcillion, standing in the center of the magic circle, says that knights who are sensitive to mana may feel slight dizziness and therefore asks to pay attention to this warning and then asks where Klaus's mages are. The man says that he exists and his name is Glenn. Howard and he are Klaus's mage from Ikros. The dark-haired woman says she is Ramon. The gentleman asks to come to him to check everything. Glenn asks why they're so embarrassed and then says it hurt his pride. Ramon thinks there's nothing he can do about it, since all the mages are so in awe of Marvel. The captain turns to Lady Lyson and then asks if she knows anything about the Emperor of Marvel. Hearing this, the protagonist reflects on how much she knows about him, but then protests, claiming she knows nothing. Fenrir reports that they say that the Emperor is a strong and cold-blooded man, and he is rightly called the perfect ruler of the Empire, and thanks to Charlotte, Eleanor was honored to be a citizen of Marvel. But it was his actions that helped rebuild, preserve, and bring prosperity to the country. The captain reports that, given all this, no one expected Emperor Marvel to do what he did 6 years ago. And if Archduke Louis hadn't managed to reconcile the two sides, who knows what kind of terrible war they would have been drawn into. Fenrir tells the lady that His Majesty fears the Marvel Emperor will do what he did 6 years ago. Of course, they hope nothing happens, but it's better to be on guard. And so he asks that if the lady encounters a problem, she should not try to hide anything but tell them everything. The captain tells the lady that as soon as they arrive in Marvel, she should not leave her side for a moment, and the girl says she understands. The assistant turns to the lady and says they've completed the preparations and therefore suggests they move out. The main character remembered that when she came to the man, she asked if he was dying or already dead. And Carcillion turns to the teacher and says he thinks he doesn't have much time left, as the food has lost its taste. He's having trouble walking and his strength is fading. Charlotte reports that she saw him chasing his son yesterday after that scoundrel beat him up. Hearing this, the man, surprised, asks if she actually saw everything, and therefore realizes she arrived yesterday, then asks why she only came now. The teacher explains that she had some business to take care of and then asks if he could stop calling her like that, and also asks if he said that he was poisoned or that he broke his leg and asks if he remembers how old he is. The master says that if he doesn't do this, the teacher won't come to the palace to visit him. Charlotte claims she's busy. Carcillion thinks that no matter how busy she is, she's hardly busier than the emperor of an entire country. And the lady says he certainly knows what an emperor is like if he has time to feign illness. His Majesty says that sometimes it seems to him that becoming an emperor was not his best idea. And as soon as he thinks that it is time for him to leave the throne, his only son and heir disappears and turns out to be returning. The man says he will be emperor for the rest of his days, die on the throne, and then be doomed to wander the palace corridors as a ghost. Lottie suggests not to worry, because if he becomes a ghost, she will come and exorcise him. The teacher approaches Carcillion and then strokes his head and says that he is already a great emperor, and he no longer needs to work so hard. To understand this, he just needs to look at what the Marvel Empire has become. His Majesty claims that Marvel became what he is thanks to her teacher, which is why he never worried that even when he is gone, she will still be more worthy of this throne than anyone else. At this time, the main character thought that she might not worry, because judging by his actions, he did not recognize her, but he might have suspicions about her, since Carcillion would never do anything that could harm Marvel. Charlotte realizes that she still needs to be wary. The gentleman informs that the gates are open and they are starting to move, and therefore asks them to remain in their places until they finish moving. At this time, the main character thought that it was simply amazing that he alone could hold the gate, because she had never seen it before and thought that this was a new magician. A few minutes later, the man asks in surprise where they are, as there was snow everywhere and it was very cold. He thinks that no matter how you look at it, it hardly looks like Marvel's capital, as there were only rocks all around. The man says that he will explain everything and therefore suggests staying calm. The captain claims that he will have to explain everything because his answer will determine where Klaus's sword will be directed. The magician turns to Klaus's magicians and says that before leaving, they had the opportunity to check everything, and then asks if there was something wrong with the magic circle. Glenn objects and points out that the magic circle definitely stated that they were supposed to go to the Marvel capital. He believes that if there had been any problems with the inscriptions, they would have immediately mentioned it. The gentleman asks if they heard everything themselves, since he wrote down the location in the spell correctly, and there shouldn't have been any problems with returns, and then asks why, in that case, they ended up here and not in the capital. The magician says that he is also confused and scared when he hears this. The main character screams and asks if they should also believe it when he tells this lie with such an imperturbable look. The man claims this is the third time since his birth that he's been so surprised and shocked by what's happening. The woman tells him to stop and suggests they figure out who's to blame for this situation later. Charlotte argues that they should all focus on how to leave this place. At this time, the captain screams and announces that something is approaching and tells the knights to get ready. Lottie suggests that they not engage in battle and believes that they need to hide to avoid a dangerous situation. Fenrir says that perhaps they are not as strong as His Excellency the Archduke, but suggests not to underestimate the people who are here and therefore asks to trust her. The lady objects and says that this is not the problem, and the captain tells the assistant not to leave the Lady Fox. Suddenly, they saw a dragon, and the man, surprised, asked why it was so big and if it looked like a normal ranger. The magician replied that he'd never seen one so huge before. At this point, the captain attacked the dragon and slashed at it with his sword. The knights cried out, declaring that their captain was the best. The mage, surprised, asks why the dragon was reborn. He believes it's not just a rebirth, as the dragon split, turning into two. And to destroy it, they need to create an explosion and burn its body. The captain asks if the great Marvel mage plans to simply observe what's happening. He replies that he used a huge amount of mana to open the gate and needs time to recover. Fenrir screamed and said that he had the mana to attack her, and then asked if there weren't 4 of them here. and then asked if they were offering His Highness to fight this terrible creature. The man asks if someone shouldn't take responsibility in a situation like this. The captain replies that His Highness has a weak stomach, which is why he hates fighting monsters. He then turns to the mage and asks if he's planning to teleport and abandon them. The mage replies that, unfortunately, they cannot use the travel gate here because he believes that the captain should also have sensed that the mana here is unstable. Lottie asks if this is the Calberon Ridge, and at that moment she thinks that it was here, 100 years ago, that the first battle of the Archmage Charlotte Eleanor with Death took place. Subsequently, the magic in these mountains became dangerous and unstable. That's why many magicians come there to train. And the people of Marvel call this place the Path of Trials. The captain asks the mage if he'll just run away without even trying. Then she says that as soon as they return to Klaus, she'll conduct a thorough investigation. Fenrir is surprised and asks why there are 4 Ragnals here. Then she says that if there are 10 of them, she will deal with them and simply crush them into dust. The captain saw that there were more and more of these dragons and realized that it was becoming a little dangerous there. Jan tells my lady that she can't go there because she thinks it's dangerous. The main character says that this is the ridge of the Calberon, and as soon as the Ragnals. When Calberona see uninvited guests on their territory, they immediately call others for help. And therefore, when they attack one, others soon appear. And usually one Ragnal calls 3 to 5 more Ragnal. Lottie says that if so many Ragnals arrived here at once, it only means one thing, that someone planned this in advance. Hearing this, the gentleman remembered how he'd once asked the teacher to look, because he'd seen many Ragnals, and it seemed to him there were more than 100 of them. He also wondered if something had happened, because they were now heading towards him. The teacher claims that these fools still don't understand anything. The assistant tells them to all go back, since everyone has been given the order to retreat and run to the highest point that is near them. Ian says the captain will cover them from behind, so they shouldn't look back. And if they want to live, they must run as fast as they can. He takes the lady in his arms and asks for forgiveness. The girl, screaming, asks what he's doing. The man replies that even if it's uncomfortable, he asks her to be patient for a little while. Milady insists she can run on her own, but he says she's slower than the knight. The crown prince asks why he is carrying her in such a strange way, and thinks that she is not some kind of sack to be carried like that. The gentleman says that it is a disgusting sight, and he knew that there was a reason why he dislikes Klaus's knights so much. Meanwhile, the girl asks to be released. The assistant tells the lady that he will release her as soon as they arrive at a safe place. She asks where the safe place is, realizing it's a Calberon. Jan reports that as soon as he reaches a height, they will be able to rest there, because he believes that the Ragnals are not very smart. So once they reach the top, they will not be able to detect them. Lottie asks in surprise if he really believes this, and then says that nothing can be predicted in Calberon. Suddenly, the assistant saw a pink horse overtaking them. He asked in surprise what it was. And the magician says that this is his familiar and that creating it requires very little mana, so it is easy to use. The assistant screams and says that this is not what he asked about, and then says that he wants to know what the great wizards of Marvel are doing while their captain is trying to save everyone. The mage reports that he is currently accumulating mana, so it is not yet possible for him to enter the battle. In addition, it is very undesirable for mages to use mana on the mountain ridge. Ian reminds him that he just said he created this horse with magic and understands he needed mana to do so. He replies that His Majesty simply doesn't like running. The knight asks in surprise what he is talking about, and then asks about the other magicians. The magician says that it seems to him that he will die before he heals someone. Hearing this, Glenn is surprised and asks Sir Howard if he told the truth. The magician says that unfortunately he has too little experience, and Ramon screams and says that her leg is stuck. The assistant claims that they are all useless and asks someone to help this magician quickly. Ramon asks the night lady to save her. The assistant tells the captain not to waste time on this helpless mage and to get out of there quickly, while the fox lady suggests holding on tight. At this point, the protagonist thought she couldn't even lift her head for shame. Carcillion reflects on the fact that he thought they were being watched, but believes that this is impossible. The magician asks in surprise if he is really sure that everything will be okay with them, because he understands that for some reason they are all gathering around them instead of moving on, and believes that now they can't even see them. Charlotte asks if he can do anything because she believes that this is Marvel's land, and no one knows this place better than the Marvel mages. She turns to the man and claims that he is the main mage who is responsible for the travel gates. The lady asks if he is involved in what is happening here, and at that time she thought that if this is his doing, then it means he has a plan to fix all this. The main character believes that if he is truly a well-trained, high-level Marvel mage, then the mana limitation in the Calberon is not a problem for him. The magician claims that he has nothing to do with this. Glenn says that his shamelessness knows no bounds, and then says that if they don't have a solution yet, then at least let him try to do something, and asks who brought them here. The magician reminds them that he already told them that all of this was unintentional. Glenn objects, saying that it still doesn't look like he's trying to do anything. The man insists that it's not that he doesn't want to do something, but that he can't. Gerhard claims that even for a Calberon, such a number of Ragnells is too much, and given their position and strength, they won't be able to deal with them anyway. The captain says that even though these are mountains, there aren't usually so many monsters there. And the most important thing is that they ended up there by mistake when they went to Marvel, and she's not stupid enough to believe that all of this is a coincidence. The lady asks why Marvel set all this up. The main character remembers that the Marquis of Fasio turned to her and begged her to save His Highness Reselin. The teacher tells him to stop humiliating himself and get up from his knees, and then asks what good it will do if he bends his legs a little. Lottie says that if they leave things as they are, the second prince will also be in danger, and then asks if they're really just going to stand there and watch. He asks what she's talking about, and then asserts that when things get really dangerous, he'll save her apprentice. Charlotte says that he must save his student himself, because in a test, a teacher can only help his student, and then asks if it wasn't he who gathered all these Ragnells here. The teacher says that she knows what he was planning, but she has the impression that she was lured into a trap because he used almost all of his mana for this, and now he can't even save his only student and thinks that this is a pity. The magician claims that they all got it wrong and then asks how he could do this to Lady Eleanor. The main character says that she is now speaking despite the fact that she is here, and despite the fact that this child is her student and believes that he still committed such a stupidity. The lady reports that all these evil acts are directed at this child, and she considers it an attack on her personally, and then asks if he understood what she said. The Marquis asks why she is protecting the second prince, since he is a half-breed and a non-entity who cannot even sense mana. Charlotte says that there is too big a difference between them, and therefore she sees no point in further conversation. The Marquis claims that he still knows that she is going to save Reselin, because they did not fall and it is she who is holding them. The teacher asks what he is talking about, and then says that she knew that his personality was disgusting as dirt on the street, and yet she thought that his abilities were quite useful. But this turned out to be untrue. The main character claims that she doesn't keep them. Reselin screams and asks why no one is following them and what the Marquis and Archmage are doing now. The man asks the Marquis Fasio if he's sure the Ragnell plan will work. He replies that of course, because even if it's Lady Eleanor, it's hard to handle so many Ragnells at once. He believes it will be enough to intimidate the second prince. Hearing this, the young master said that this was excellent, because he believed that this time he would put him in his place. And at that moment, he thought about how a man who not only couldn't cast spells, but couldn't even sense mana, dared to claim the title of emperor. Reselin tells Carcillion, if only he hadn't gotten in his way, he would have completed this task long ago. Hearing this, the guy asks him to stop, as he's having a hard time holding them back. The Marquis asks what she means by that, since he believes the second prince can't even sense mana. He asks what Lady Eleanor did to him and, surprised, says that's precisely why he can. Charlotte claims that she did nothing and that this child is endowed with enormous talent, and it is just that none of them could see it. At this time, Carcillion fought the monsters with all his might, and then screamed and said that he couldn't do it anymore. The Archmage, seeing this, says that's enough for her. Reselin, surprised, asks the teacher why she came here. He also asks if she's going to solve this problem and asks her to quickly save him. Charlotte says that it seems he misunderstood something and then says that she did not come here to save the first prince. The lady asks if this will be a test, and then states that they must overcome everything themselves or wait for their teacher, the Marquis Fasio, although she does not think that he will come. Hearing this, the prince asks what she is saying and also inquires whether she is leaving him here alone, and then says that if His Majesty finds out about this, he will punish her. The young master asks if she, as an archmage, Marvella isn't ashamed of her actions now. Lottie replies that she's not ashamed, and he, surprised, asks why she's treating him like this, and wonders if he's somehow at fault before the mistress. The teacher suggests doing this, and if the first prince apologizes and thinks about what he is guilty of, then perhaps she will change her decision. Reselin claims that he is not guilty of anything, because His Majesty said that representatives of the Marvel imperial family should not bow their heads to anyone. And he also said that they should do everything correctly, because if he did something bad, then in his eyes, this act is not a mistake. And then he asks what he should apologize for. Charlotte says that she'd better think about what to eat tomorrow morning, because maybe he's like this because there weren't any decent adults around him. The young master claims that if His Majesty finds out that she treated him like that, she will be in trouble, no matter how great an archmage she is. However, the main character claims that if he makes a mistake, he should always sincerely ask for forgiveness, no matter who he is, a street beggar or the ruler of an empire, and then says that they don't have time. So she gives him 5 seconds. Raycillin suggests waiting and then says that all these Ragnalls are the fault of the Marquis Faccio, and it is not him. The teacher mentions the number 4, then 3. He asks if she'll leave him here alone, as she suspects he might be wounded or killed, and therefore even an archmage won't be able to escape responsibility. The main character tells the number 1, and the young gentleman screams and says that he was wrong and it is all his fault. The teacher insists he shouldn't apologize to her. The prince turns to the Carcillion and tells them he was right. Carcillion asks the teacher what good are these apologies if they don't come from the heart. She agrees and asserts that he's right. Carcil turns to the young gentleman and reminds him that earlier he said that it was all because of him, and no matter how much he offended him, he could endure everything. But the soldier who was kind to him was brutally beaten almost to death, and the librarian who always brought him books was kicked out of her beloved job. The boy says that the servant who was riding with him in the carriage was so badly injured that he might never be able to walk again. Raycillin asks him in surprise what he means by that. The boy insists it was all because of him that he wanted to become emperor, and now that he's heard his heartless apology, he wants to tell him it's all because of him. Charlotte says they've had a talk. The boy turns to the teacher and asks if something can be done about it. She asks if it's the first prince, but he objects and says it's the Ragnalls. The main character explains that a very dangerous situation has developed here, and other mages who come here could be harmed. He asks if there is a way out. The teacher says that they actually have several options, but now it's best to choose the simplest one, and then suggests watching carefully, because in this situation she used magic. Marquis Faccio, screaming, says that it is best to get rid of everyone in one fell swoop. At this time, the main character almost lost consciousness, but Jan caught her. His Majesty says this girl looks very much like her. The captain tells the assistant to take his hands off her immediately. Meanwhile, the girl thinks she doesn't understand how she got to this point. Fenrir tells Lady Lyson not to leave her side for a moment, then reports that monsters are trying to break through from below. She doesn't understand how this is possible and believes they should move on. The assistant informs that there is a cliff behind them, and in order to get to the other side, they need to go down to the ground again. But he understands that going down is very dangerous, and he asks what they should do next. His Majesty asks if there is another way out, and Lady Arya asserts that there is always a way out. His Majesty says that they have 13 high-ranking knights and 2 lieutenant mages, and his son, 1 Marvel prince, but most importantly, mages cannot freely use magic here. The young gentleman turns to the young lady and offers to tell them how she proposes to deal with such a number of monsters with the forces they have. The main character says that there is something else, and that it is an incredibly powerful magician who is stronger than everyone present here combined. The lady approaches the prince, and he claims that, as he said earlier, he is not a magician, but she kicks him and he falls off the cliff. Jan, surprised, says she pushed a man who doesn't possess magic. Meanwhile, the young gentleman approached the lady, and she pushed him too. Marvel's doing, and therefore believes that they should sort it out themselves. At this time, the knights do not understand what is happening because the Rangels are flying apart into small pieces. The mage says it's incredibly dazzling golden mana, and they believe the archmage has arrived to help. Marvel. The lady asks the captain if his aura will reach the mountain behind her. She says that while they're currently destroying the Ragnells in front of them, they'll choose another path. Charlotte says that the place where they are now standing will sooner or later collapse, and therefore it is better to create a bridge from the broken pieces of rock and cross it. The captain turns to Klaus's mages and says that when the mountain falls, let them use magic to fasten the stones along which they will retreat. The assistant says that he thinks that all the stones will fall on the monsters that are below, and therefore believes that nothing bad will happen if they try. Glenn says that they will do everything, but he understands that this is a Calberon, and therefore it is difficult to use mana there. But if they listen carefully to him, then everything will work out. And if they meet monsters on the way, then the knights should deal with them. Only they will use a lot of strength. The main character says about 2 people from Marvel that if they want to help the 2 who fell down, then let them go down and help. But if not, then they should go with them. Charlotte thought that he was still a child, and therefore she would be lenient towards him. The captain claims that they must follow Lady Lyson's plan and therefore tells everyone to get ready because they are starting a fight. Fenrir tells them not to stand there like statues, but to get ready to run. At this time, the main character looked at the bottle and thought that it was good that she kept it to herself. The aristocrats ask His Excellency what he thinks about this, because they believe that twice in a row is pure madness. And if he allows something like this once, then next time they will ask him for even more. At this time, the gentleman thought that Lottie should have arrived there by now, and he does not understand why no one from Marvel contacted them, and he thinks that maybe it was worth sending stronger knights with her. The assistant asks His Excellency if he has any wishes. Geoffrey wonders why he's bothering him. The Archduke used magic to disperse all those who asked him stupid questions and wasted his time. Sylvan says in surprise that if he wanted to figure it out himself, he would have simply told him in advance. And at this time, the aristocrat says that they were wrong and they understood everything, even if he used words to explain. The gentleman says he made a small mistake and then asks if anyone was hurt. However, he realizes that it would be more appropriate for him to ask if anyone was killed. The Archduke realizes Lottie used the potion, and he wonders what happened. He believes he should have gone with her after all. At this time, the main character drank the potion and she remembers Geoffrey, but she doesn't understand what he did, because it wasn't a mana spell. The gentleman addresses His Majesty. He says that she is an interesting girl and asks if it is true. The prince says that now is not the time for laughter. He asks why he shouldn't laugh, and then asks if he saw his face when he fell here. His Majesty says that he feels that they should study the Lysan aria better, and if he allows him, he would like to accompany her to Klaus. The Emperor asks if this is necessary, since he thinks he already knows the truth and thinks that this needs to be finished quickly, and then asks where the Imperial Guard is. At this time, the main character thought that although she is similar in essence to Mana, she is much heavier and releases very sad energy. The girl realized that instead of magic, she was using Geoffrey's aura. At that moment, she couldn't believe he'd given her such a huge amount of pure aura, and she realized that terrible things could happen to his body if he'd given up so much aura. The assistant asks if everything is all right with my lady. She assures him that everything is fine, and at that moment, she thinks about how a sword master feels about you. After all, she feels like she can defeat anyone. The main character looked at another mountain and saw a man there who was watching them. The assistant says that it seems that she will soon fall and therefore suggests that they return quickly, and says that he will go with the Lady Fox and therefore tells them to quickly leave and the lady to follow him. Charlotte thinks she wasn't mistaken because she saw Evan. Ian asks Milady why she needed his sword and also asks who else this man is, and says that judging by his appearance, he is a magician. Milady asks what he's doing. Evan tells her he hates the color blue. The assistant asks the lady who this man is, as he thinks he resembles a mage. But there's something odd about him, and he needs to report it to the captain immediately. She says she'll borrow his sword for a while. The main character tells the knight to go to the captain and cross to the other side with her. And since the situation has changed, the Marvel mages will definitely help them. The girl says that in the meantime, she will take part in a small battle. Fenrir asks if something happened again and then asks what's going on there. The knight informs the captain that Lady Lysan took the sword from his assistant and is now surrounded by a blue aura and fighting an unknown man who appeared out of nowhere. The servant says he doesn't know who he is, but he's a very handsome man. The captain thinks that if he appeared here so unexpectedly, it might mean he's a Marvel mage, and she doesn't understand why he's fighting a lady. Ramon suggests they try it together first and then asks if he's ready. Glenn asks if she's really going to do it. She insists that if there's a chance of success, they should try, believing it's better than dying doing nothing, and then asks where the formula is. At this time, His Highness says that he knows that at Klaus, everyone uses the transformation method to change the first formula of Fëanor. But in Calberon, it will be much better for mana if they use a weak spell, because he believes that this is a good option to create the most primitive sphere. Hearing this, the mages agreed with him. The captain addressed His Highness and said that in the current situation, it would be right for him to shed light on what was happening here. He explained that he had always strived for peace, but he believed Emperor Marvel had other goals. Fenrir reports that he demanded that Lady Lysan be brought to Marvel, otherwise he was going to start a war with Klaus, and then asks if His Highness doesn't know about this. The gentleman says he suspects he has some guesses about this. The captain insists that their ruler likes to know everything for sure, and therefore asks her to please tell him everything. He tells her not to waste her energy on this, as he believes the situation will soon become clear. The main character recalls that she told Evan that he broke his promise again and therefore offered to explain himself. The boy claims that he did not use magic, and the teacher says that she believes this because she understands that if he had used magic, the lives of these children would have been in danger. Evan claims he's also seriously injured, and the Archmage says those children were badly hurt, with broken legs and broken teeth, and a full recovery will take several months. The young gentleman claims that it is their own fault that they are such weak and stupid creatures because they stole them, and when they ate, they talked and laughed. Charlotte asks if those kids took his candy. He replies that they just made him angry. The main character says that 3 years have passed since she took him in, but nothing has changed, and he is still just as arrogant and thinks only of himself. Lottie believes that no matter how much he explains and swears, he is unable to admit his mistakes and keep his word, and believes that his stay next to her is useless. The lady says that from now on, she no longer cares who she beats and who beats him, since he does not have to follow her, because he now has his own path. Hearing this, Evan asks in surprise what it means. He wonders if she's leaving him. The Archmage asks if he thinks he locked the door and now she can't get out. The guy says he was wrong and it's all his fault, insisting it won't happen again. Evan says that if Mistress Charlotte forbids it, then he will not harm anyone again. The main character tells the guy that just because there are people weaker than him doesn't mean he can do whatever he wants with them, because every person in this world, whether weak or strong, is worthy of respect if their heart isn't evil. And so, she wants the guy to spend more time with other people and experience happiness. Evan agrees with her, and the woman tells him to apologize to those children and come back because she will be waiting for him. Charlotte saw Eldo and said in surprise that she should be picking fruit now. The girl asks if she can be calm in this situation, since she asked the lady not to pick up any strange things. She insists that she get rid of him. Charlotte says it's not a thing, and his name is Evan. The young lady says that when she first saw him, he looked like a beast, but now he tries to imitate people, but he's still very far from human. Eldo asks the teacher if she herself didn't see that he could easily heal those scratches on himself, but he left them to look unhappy in front of her, and therefore believes that there is darkness inside him. The girl says that in any case, all her students are abnormal, and she wonders how the teacher could have gathered all these outcasts. Charlotte wonders if she, too, is one of these outcasts. Hearing this, the young lady objects and then insists she wasn't joking when she said she needed to throw out this strange thing. Eldo tells the teacher that if she's so hard on him, she should at least distance herself from him, since he really is very strange. The teacher asks if he's so strange, and the girl says she has a very bad feeling about him. At this time, the main character reflects on the fact that it seems that everything is bad, because she thought that Evan's hostility and anger had practically disappeared after that day. But now it seems to her that everything has returned again. Charlotte realizes this is different from what she felt when they met in Klaus, and as far as she knows, it's not like Evan's fighting style. And the lady wondered if something had happened in the meantime. Evan asks what she's thinking. Lottie replies that she thinks she needs to know what happened to him. Then she says anything will do and simply suggests she say anything. The guy says she's very weak, and Charlotte replies that she always thought fists were better than swords. And then she hits him. The main character realized she'd been hit and assumed he'd intentionally failed to dodge, then asked if he was okay. The lady knew she'd channeled pure aura into her fist, and he should have dodged. Lottie says he has red liquid running near his mouth. Evan calls her name Charlotte. Hearing this, the girl asks in surprise who he is. At this point, the knight, screaming, orders everyone to hurry. The captain asks Sir Fennin where Lady Lyson is. Evan looks at the girl and says that it would be nice if everyone had eyes like that. The main character grabs the guy by the shirt and asks who he is. At this time, the gentleman appears and says that he is a little late because the destruction of the monsters took some time and believes that not everyone can cope with them all in one fell swoop. Carcillion informs her that the Marvel mages will deal with the debris and should kill her any minute now, and therefore suggests that she not worry, since he was still surprised to feel an unfamiliar energy, and then asks who he is. The young gentleman looked at the guy and said that they hadn't seen each other for a long time, and then called him his youngest and said that he was Evan, and also asked how they met because it seemed to him that they were very close. The main character shuts the guy's mouth and at that time thought that Carcillion does not know about the current state, and also assumes that if he has not met him, he does not know. The prince tells the girl that he has thought about something and decided that they have little time, so they need a secluded place, and then asks how about this. He closed himself off from everyone. The prince informs them that no one will be able to see them and no one will be able to eavesdrop on their conversation. He thinks it's a bit cramped, but the atmosphere is cozy and asks if that's true. The guy explains that everything would have collapsed anyway, but he simply created a cozy corner in case the thief wanted to escape. The gentleman turns to Evan and says that 4 years have already passed since the day when he stole the treasures of Marvel, the heart of the volcano, and escaped. And when he finds him, there will not be a single hair left on this head. And then asks if he really hasn't seen him until today because of this girl. Killian offers the lady a look at this rude boy, and she thought about how he was last seen in the mountains 4 years ago. In Calberon, mana is unstable, and although this place is dangerous and most mages avoid it from time to time, talented mages use the conditions for Togo to strengthen their mana. Sometimes they achieve remarkable results in magic. The heart of the volcano, in turn, is an incredibly valuable stone that has absorbed various magical properties over many years. Among these, the most important is mana amplification. Charlotte speculates that he did something to the volcano's heart in Calberon, but she believes that he would have needed a huge amount of mana to do so, and wonders why there were no traces left behind. The girl with black hair reports that she heard something about the fifth student, something about the devil's domain. It seems that he went where people cannot go. The main character thinks that this is just a rumor, because in the notes that Jeffrey gave her, nothing was mentioned about this. Carcillion suggests taking a look at this foolish boy who believes he hasn't changed at all since their first meeting. He claims there shouldn't be any magic, and if he uses it in such a small space, the young lady could get hurt. The gentleman thinks it would be better for the girl's safety if he quietly accompanied him into Marvel's dungeon, and then asks if he agrees. He then states that he simply doesn't think leaving him free is the best solution. Suddenly, Evan began to move away, and the main character thought that she still hadn't checked her guesses. The guy with silver hair came closer to Charlotte and then took her hand and kissed her, and he said that they would meet again. Carcillion thinks that he should have been arrested immediately after he stole the volcano's heart. And then he turns to the young lady and says that it seems she had a long conversation with his teacher's youngest student. The young gentleman asks Togo if he'd like to talk to him a little. He looks at the girl, wondering if everything is okay, and then asks about it. The gentleman says that the Imperial Guard has already arrived and is waiting below. The main character doesn't understand whether he has gone too far. And at this time, the captain turns to Lady Lyson and asks if everything is okay with her, and also inquires whether she is injured. Fenrir reports that everything is back to normal now. And it was Marvel's fault they were in the Calberon Mountains, as he deliberately put them in danger. She explains that there were so many people nearby, yet they still didn't do anything and could have used magic, but they said he wasn't a mage and were simply observing everything. The captain says that she will provide His Majesty with an official report on what happened, and therefore believes that this will affect the future relationship between Klaus and Marvel. The gentleman says that he offers his deepest apologies, because they had a very important reason for which they were forced to resort to creating such a situation, but as a result, nothing terrible happened, and no one was hurt. Carcillion reports that fortunately Klaus's knights are very talented, so they weren't worried about anything. But whatever their reasons, they were right to deceive them, and so he sincerely apologizes to all of Klaus's knights. Fenrir screams and asks if he thinks that he can so easily absolve himself of responsibility with just one apology, and then says that if the Marvel Emperor bowed to them and asked for forgiveness, it would be a completely different matter. The Emperor finally appeared, and everyone bowed their knees and heads before him. He said he, too, had been in danger along with the knights and hoped this would bring them some comfort. The man reports that he has a gazillion of worries. Sour Marvel, and he's the Emperor of Marvel. He says that Klaus's knights shouldn't want for anything in the palace, and since everyone is very tired right now, he suggests continuing their conversation inside. Glenn is surprised to hear that he turned out to be the Emperor and that they got into the castle so easily, and he considers them scoundrels. But he is truly interested in what is going on here. Ian turns to the captain and asks how they allowed themselves to be separated from Lady Leeson, since he thinks that suddenly those Marvel scoundrels are up to something again. A man with long hair approaches the respected knights and asks if they have rested a bit, and if they are ready, he offers to take them to His Highness. The main character asks in surprise if she should wear it. The maid claims that His Majesty personally ordered this dress to be prepared for her. Charlotte objects and says nothing is needed since she's happy with her clothes. Madame asks if she doesn't like them, then says they have several options and asks why she doesn't take a look. The lady says that this outfit is very beautiful, and at that time she thought that she does not have time to look at these dresses. The maid says that Monsieur Vermont is already here, but they are not ready yet. The butler informs them that His Majesty is waiting for them. The maid screams and says that the lady is not ready yet, and asks to wait a little. then turns to my lady and says that she has very beautiful eyes. And she reminded them of the Marvel heroine because she had the same beautiful golden eyes. At this time, Charlotte, walking along the corridor, thought about the paintings on every corner, and she was sure that she had burned everything the last time she came to the palace. The man tells Countess Lyson that he doesn't know what she talked about with His Majesty, but he doesn't trust her. Because he believes that many people have no conscience and want to take advantage of Charlotte's name, and this dishonest trash, no matter how much he crushes it and tramples on it, continues to appear one after another. The gentleman believes that even if she looks like her, she can never compare to her, even when she smiles. At that time, the main character thought that he was a good boy because he understood that one must always be on guard and question everything, and she thought that it was wonderful that there was such a good boy next to Carcillion. The guy tells the girl that he saw the end of his teacher, and the last moment when the golden shine of her eyes faded, the teacher was smiling and he asks if she felt relief. Carcillion says that this thought constantly swirled around in his head, and he could never have imagined that he would say goodbye to the teacher in this way. But he could not come to terms with why the teacher made such a choice, because he believes that something was bothering her and she decided to leave alone. The lady believes that she had a reason for everything, and if the teacher chose to leave this way, then it was the right and best decision possible, and this ending was the best option for the teacher. The guy says that in the last moment of her life, he really wanted to tell her something, and he constantly thought about it, because in her will, she transferred all her property and rights to Marvel, and instructed him to officially announce her death. But even 8 years later, he still did not tell anyone about her death. The young man says that he and Marvel still need her and believes that he made a selfish decision, and it seems that only now he understood her that maybe the teacher is just tired. The guy says that when she saved the world from destruction and was named an archmage, she was only 16 years old, and from that moment on, she ran nonstop, trying to live up to the expectations of many people. She always showed only her ideal self until her greatness turned her into a deity to whom even death could not bring freedom. The student understands that she had to bear a heavy burden on her fragile shoulders, and he should have taken this burden, but he could not, and therefore he believes that he is no different from other people who always relied on her and behaved like spoiled children. The guy says that she had 5 students, but none of them helped her, and then asks how he can be so pathetic, and thinks that maybe the teacher regrets making such a useless person her student. Charlotte says she doesn't regret it, and that if she were in his teacher's shoes, she would say exactly those words. She believes that if the teacher had regretted it, and asks if she would have smiled so happily in her last moment. The young man explains that the teacher called Mana the breath of God. When the breath of God joins the sincerity of the heart, God grants him magic in return. And with this blessing, they perform miracles that make the impossible possible. He then asks, "What if this isn't a gift from God?" The young gentleman says that he feels like he has finally come to terms with her decision and now wants to become her strength because he believes that she is not some kind of relic that needs to be protected and revered. And therefore, he will do everything possible to become a tree in the shade of which she can rest. Carcillion informs His Highness that they are entering. The Emperor says that in the future, when she meets him, it would be better for her not to talk about who she really is, since he believes that this time it is better to keep the students at a distance, and the girl asks him if he does the same. Vermont wonders if he can be put on the same level as these infants, and at that time the lady thought that he is no different from them. The guy says that Mr. Vermin used magic so that they could not hear them, and he is interested in who this girl is with whom he is having a secret conversation with a happy smile on his face. The Emperor addresses Klaus's knights and says that he knows this will not be enough, but he offers a formal apology to Klaus and also intends to pay them compensation for the troubles caused. His Majesty says he understands that they harbor resentment, but he wishes they would be generous and listen to his story. He then reveals that there is one person they have been searching for a long time. Vermont reports that he learned about the Countess from Klaus about Arya Lyson by accident and wanted to make sure that they were looking for her, and he was able to confirm his suspicions that the person they were looking for was indeed this girl. The captain says that he explained everything and didn't really explain anything, and then asks the one he was looking for if Lady Fox turned out to be a citizen of Klaus who has nothing to do with Marvel. His Majesty claims that it doesn't matter now, and maybe she is now a citizen of Klaus. But there is a strong connection between her and Marvel that cannot be forgotten or discarded. The main character recalls a conversation in which she told the Carcillion that she felt that hiding in the shadows was not in her character at all. And besides, death could come again now. Charlotte thinks that Evan is obviously somehow connected to his death and then asks if he knows it too. The Emperor announces that he will now make an official statement, and this girl is Arya Leeson. And the great Archmage marvels Charlotte Eleanor is related, and she is her sixth student. The Archduke thought that Lottie was no longer looking for love, and he would like her to continue searching because then he could. At this time, a servant comes into his room and tells him that they were unable to ensure security, and a girl with incredible abilities has appeared, and he thinks that this magician is of a high level and has at least 5 rings of mana. The gentleman says it's impossible for such a gifted mage to be there, and then asks what she looked like. He replies that she was a blonde, green-eyed elf. Riel says that it irritates her because they are not here, and she claims that they are creatures and asks why they did not give her the correct information. The teacher says that she is wasting her power in vain and that she is tired and suggests that Riel return. The Emperor reports that the data on the appearance of demons, their movements are insignificant, and there were no suspicious cases that could cause concern. However, the followers of death. The girl says she seems to be the center of the gathering and is an Ozbal. They rarely appear in Marvel, but some stories have started to circulate, and they're currently investigating the rumors. Charlotte asks about McVen's account and about his connection with Evan. The Emperor says they have no evidence of Evan's connection to them, but he doesn't think they'll find anything substantial, as he believes the boy isn't the type to enjoy company. The lady asks how long ago he realized something was wrong with Evan. The Emperor reminds her that he already told her that Evan stole the heart of the volcano, and after that incident, he was often seen in Calberon. The girl says that she heard that at that time in the mountains, he often got into fights with other magicians, and then strange rumors appeared that began after that day. Soon after Evan stole the heart of the volcano and escaped, many Marvel magicians went to Calberon for training, and they said that they saw a terrible picture surrounded by countless demons lay Evan's body stained with red liquid. The demons were certain he was dead. His Majesty reports that when he heard this story, he immediately went there but found nothing. No countless demons or traces of magic. The gentleman says that he still doesn't know what those wizards saw then, but he is absolutely sure that something changed after that. Charlotte says she must meet with those mages in person because she believes that if he used the volcano's heart for something, there should have been traces left behind. She will meet with them, and if they conduct another investigation in Calberon, they will definitely find something. The main character believes they must find a way to track down and capture Evan, as she's certain he's still in Marvel. And they must do something before it's too late. The young gentleman asks if His Majesty is in his office. The servant explains that he has given orders not to let anyone out. The guy asks if he's with Arya Leeson now. The guard explains that they were talking from yesterday until this morning. The young gentleman says that he is sure that they have something to talk about since they had the same teacher, and she is the 6th student of the Archmage, and therefore it seems to him that glory and blessing have returned to Marvel again. The servant tells the master that behind closed doors they are now saying that Arya Leeson is related to Charlotte by blood. Eleanor then asks if he knows anything about it. The guard says that he himself saw how much Lady Leeson resembles Mrs. Charlotte, and that is why he thought that suddenly she was her relative, the daughter she was hiding. Hearing this, the master was surprised, and the servant explained that she was hiding because she had given birth to a daughter. And now with the appearance of a new student, rumors are growing like mushrooms. At this time, the door opens and the main character comes out. The security guard thought that she heard everything and did not understand what to do. And his friend said that she gave them her mistake and therefore they think that everything is fine. Charlotte believes that Evan is still in Marvel and therefore she will definitely catch him and do everything possible to ensure that nothing happens to him, and the teacher does not worry in vain. The main character reflects on the fact that she should now think only about herself since she is very young. Lottie thinks he immediately realized that her mana rings were damaged and he couldn't help but notice that she had become so weak. The girl says that Lewister sent his men to Marvel's palace without fear because she saw the box in which the ring was lying. The Archduke claims that he will never do anything that could harm Marvel and suggests that it would be better to tell what this story is about the 6th student. The lady explains that the Carcillion recognized her and she needed a plausible story to explain her interruption here. Charlotte suggests thinking about what to do with the knights who arrived in Marvel with the delegation, and then says that she will stay in Marvel for a while, and if they are not going to return with her, then let her return to Klaus now. Jeffrey agrees with her and claims that he will resolve this issue and then asks if she is okay, because it seems to him that her voice sounds depressed. Charlotte says that she is interested in whether everything is okay with him and what happened to him, since she understands that in Marvel it is not so easy to get such a small magical device, and then asks what kind of strange potion he gave her. The Archduke asks if she's doing anything dangerous and if it wasn't useful to her. The girl insists she'll never use it again. The young gentleman asks why she is dramatizing everything again, and then says that he tried so hard because he has been studying magic very hard lately. Lottie asks, since when he became interested in magic, and he claims that he is very interested in it because he fell in love with it from the very beginning. The main character believes he's hiding something from her and tells her to confess immediately. He replies that he thinks he's found the location of her second student, Julian Orvia. The teacher remembered that she told Riel that they were finally there and suggested that she constantly maintain the transformation spell so that she would not be recognized in this place. The gentleman says that Fertrin continues to create problems, but this time he will turn a blind eye to it. But if it happens again, they will take action. The Emperor asks if Lady Lyson is in her room, and the servant replies that when His Majesty asked 10 minutes ago and he checked, she was there. The gentleman says anything can happen in 10 minutes and therefore tells her to go and check again. Meanwhile, he thinks about how she shouldn't be offended because he told her not to get involved in Evan's case. The butler informs His Majesty that the lady has disappeared from the room. At this time, the main character thought that she should check everything herself. Because judging by his words, Julian belongs to some mysterious organization that is engaged in the search for so-called magic stones. The young lady realizes that after studying the places where they had been before, she has narrowed the search to 15 points. And since 4 of them are in Marvel, she is going to check them out. The Emperor asks the girl if she tried to hide with her students and also inquires if everything has changed. She insists that nothing has changed. She simply needs to see everything with her own eyes. The girl thought about what if the rumors turn out to be true, and His Majesty tells her not to blame herself, since he always said and repeats again that she does not know much about her students, because they were strange from the very beginning. Carcillion also said he knew nothing about Julian's whereabouts. So, if we put all the rumors aside, they have one reliable fact. For some unknown reason, half of the Pantheon forest was destroyed, after which Julian disappeared. She was the forest's guardian, so the main character thought she'd be there. Charlotte walked into a local bar, and a man approached her and said that they weren't open yet, and so suggested they come back later when the sun went down. The lady explains that she is looking for magic stones and talks about the blue crystal because she heard that it belongs to the owner of this establishment. Hearing this, the gentleman objects and says he doesn't know who told her this and asks who she is. He then says that no matter how much she offers for him, he has no intention of selling him and therefore tells her to get lost. The main character licked her lips and asked the owner if he had the stone. He asked if she thought he'd sell it right away if she came so close. Lottie explains that he doesn't have to sell it because she doesn't intend to buy it. The man, surprised, asks what she'll do then, and she replies that she'll simply take it from him. The main character turns to Rael and tells her to get started. But suddenly the girl turns into a bird, and Lottie asks what she's doing and tells her to get started. Riel tells the teacher that someone is watching them. When the lady went outside, she took the flower and said that it was Julian. But the girl claimed that she was not Julian, and then walked away. The Emperor asks the teacher where she went. The lady, surprised, asks if she must report her every move to him. He says there's no need to say anything, then explains that the girl is now the teacher's 6th student and he needs to know at least a little about her. Charlotte says he's simply very busy, so she'll only ask him one thing. His Majesty informs him that he's finished all his business for the day and can therefore ask questions very slowly. Lottie wonders if it's true he doesn't know anything about Julian. Vermont gets up from his chair and says he suddenly remembered something. The teacher tells him to sit down and then tells him she met her today in the Marvel area. The Emperor, surprised, asks if she's alive and then explains that it's just rumors. The girl tells him to speak frankly. His Majesty explains that after that incident in the Pantheon, he immediately went there to meet Julian, but was never able to enter the Pantheon. The protagonist claims that without the Guardian's permission, no one can enter the Pantheon. He explains that although he was unable to meet Julian, he learned something from the spirits who dwell there about the Guardian's absence. After she used too much energy, Julian fell asleep to recover. Lady asks if that's why he assumed she was dead, then asks if they had a good relationship and whether he tried to find out anything. Carcillion tells the teacher that he did not give up on this matter because they sent a group of wizards to investigate everything. But Julian destroyed half of the forest, and that is why he also came to this conclusion. Charlotte claims that the keeper cannot harm the forest and then asks how she did it. The gentleman replies that he does not know for sure, but he thinks that here it is necessary to turn to Julian's past, although he could not find any obvious traces or evidence. But it seems to him that perhaps Julian tried to use time reversal magic. Riel asks the teacher what's wrong with her face. He asks where she's been and then offers to look at her. since she ordered her not to leave her side no matter what. Lottie touches the girl's face and says that when she regains her powers, she too can regain her memory, and then asks if she has already forgotten about it. Riel asks the teacher for forgiveness and then says that she suffered so much and first she will heal her wounds and then get the crystal for the lady. Charlotte says it's late and he's probably already called security, so he suggests coming back a little later when things have calmed down and tells him to never act without her permission again. She should trust her words and do what she says, and then asks if she understood everything. In the evening, the main character returned to the owner of the bar and said that it would be better if he gave it to her right away. The lady says that she doesn't know whether he's just a fool or very brave, but she thinks that if he had given it to her during the day, he would be sleeping peacefully now, and says that she thinks they were too polite to him, and then throws the knife right next to him. The girl says that he was lucky. Even though he left wounds on the teacher's body, he is still breathing, and if they weren't in Marvel now, she would have finished him off long ago. Riel tells them that they left him alive, and so he should appreciate it and not act rashly, and then they leave. Suddenly, the man screams out in fear. The main character asks if he's okay. The gentleman asks why she appeared so silently and then says that he did everything as she asked and asks if it is okay to let them go like this, since he understands that they can understand that the crystal is a fake. The main character tells him not to worry because it's not just a fake. Charlotte reflects that it's now clear that something has happened to Julian's memory. And if Carcillion is right, she too tried to turn back time, but her attempt failed, and all the energy from the spell hit Julian. Lottie reflects that if she used this magic in the Pantheon, then most likely the forest was destroyed because it was trying to protect its guardian, Julian. The lady understands that the stronger the magic, the greater the danger if the magic does not work. From what she saw, either her mind is clouded or she has lost her memory, but she does not know if Julian was harmed in any other way. The man asks if it's true that she works as a magician in the palace. The main character does not understand how badly her memory is damaged and why he calls her Riel, and she addresses him as teacher and follows him. Lottie looked up and saw the girl and then told her to jump because he would catch her. Riel, sitting in the tree, realized that it was a dream. At this time, Charlotte does not understand what this place is and thinks that she spent a lot of mana, which means that she covered a large distance, and this is definitely not Marvel. The girl thinks that first she needs to figure out what this place is, and at the end of the room, she sees a sleeping guy. The lady believes that this is the man whom Julian calls a teacher, and he is definitely a man who looks like her. Seeing her, the guy screams and asks who she is, and then asks Riel. At this time, the main character thought that it somehow happened on its own, and she does not understand whether everything will be okay with him, because she understands that he is more ordinary than she thought, and there must be something special in him. And she also wonders what kind of relationship there could be between him and Julian. Suddenly, a girl comes into the room and tells her to take her hands off him. Charlotte calls her name Julian. The green-eyed lady says she doesn't seem to have the level to even create a familiar, so she came herself. She also asks if simply following them wasn't enough, and if she found this place by tracking the crystal. The green-eyed lady believes that she is truly fearless, and also asks what made her come all this way, and what she did to the teacher. The main character replies that nothing, and then explains that he simply slipped off the bed and fell, and it seems to her that her teacher is very weak, although she understands that this friend is still young, but he needs to train a lot to strengthen his body. Julian tells the lady to move away from the teacher immediately. Julian Orvia, the great archmage, guardian of the Forest of Life of the Pantheon, was Charlotte Eleanor's second student. A green-eyed girl attacked the main character. Lottie suggests taking a closer look, as this person calling her Riel isn't her teacher. Then she hugs her around the neck and tells her that she is her teacher. Julian locked the lady behind bars and said that when the sun rises and the teacher wakes up, he will decide how to get rid of her. Charlotte asks to take a closer look. The girl says that if she uses magic in this room, she'll know immediately, and therefore advises her not to do anything stupid. And when the main character was left alone, she thought that it was useless because there was no reaction on her part. But the good news is that Julian's mana and magic are fine. Lottie understands that her student doesn't remember her because she was upset by her hostility. And if she truly considered her an enemy, the girl wouldn't have locked her in the room. The lady understands that although she was very sensitive to what happened with the teacher, she is sure that Julian was not going to fight her seriously, and suggests that maybe she instinctively feels her, since otherwise the appearance of this teacher would not be so similar to hers. The main character reflects on the fact that she doesn't want them to see such a Charlotte. Eleanor, and if Julian forgot her name, someone would pretend to be her and use her to do bad things. Charlotte is sure that she will not leave it like this for any reason, because memory is a very delicate matter that cannot be easily influenced by magic. And if you try to do something from the outside, it will only worsen the problem. The girl believes that the best way would be to make Julian remember everything herself. The knight asks in surprise what it is, and then he felt pain and passed out. Fatan says that he thinks this is the right place, and he never thought that he would be doing something like this, and believes that if everything goes well here, then he will finally be able to meet the young lady in Marvel. At dawn, the green-eyed girl brought the lady a blanket and said that she simply did not want her to catch a cold and bother her with her cough. The main character screams, asking her to wait, and then says they need to talk. However, the girl leaves, and Lottie screams, explaining that she likes to sleep in trees and also eats green fruit from the Liliana forest. Charlotte reports that she even had to drag a whole tree from there, because it was a hassle to go there every time just for the fruit. Juliana brought her something to eat and said that she didn't want her to bother her because she was hungry. The teacher suggests looking at her because she thinks that if she looks now, everything will be different. And the girl claims that she doesn't want her to disturb her because she's bored and offers to take books because she just doesn't want her to cry when she gets scared. The main character thought that this girl seemed to subconsciously feel who she was, because she believed that otherwise she would not have been walking back and forth all night and would not have been carrying all these things to her. Charlotte thinks that in any case, her concern for her is a good sign, because she didn't do anything on purpose at night, so her mana is in good condition. The teacher realized that it was time to act, and she used the magic circle to seal the mage. When a change in mana occurs in a limited space, this seal binds the subject for a certain period of time and at the same time gives a signal to the magician who created the circle. The lady understands that this magic is often used to bind magicians, but it does not work on her because this circle was created by her. It wasn't Lottie who created the seals, but Julian. And she's simply explaining here that she could have come out a long time ago, but didn't because she was bringing her mana back to normal. A man asks Riel if there were strangers in her room yesterday. She replies that there were no strangers and then asks if he had a bad dream. The guy asks her if she thinks it was a dream, and then tells her that he thinks something's been happening to her lately, because she doesn't laugh at all. And that's why he's sure it was like that when he first met her. But that's not the point, because he just wants to point out that she used to laugh a lot. He also asks if she might be having some disturbing thoughts. The man says that if something like this happened, she would have shared it with him, and then asks if that's true. He grabs the girl and tells her that if something is bothering her, she should tell him right away. The gentleman reports that they've been looking for them for a long time. He says it's been a while since he contacted them and asks why they only came now. The mister apologizes and explains that a small problem arose and several guards escaped right in the middle of the night, disappearing without a trace, and then asks why he keeps such a poor eye on his people. At this time, Julian remembered the lady's words that she should take a good look because her teacher was right in front of her. Charlotte tells Riel to be here until tomorrow morning and await her orders, and to come to her as soon as she calls him. The girl agrees. The main character uses the ring to contact the Archduke. He says he's verified what she requested and then reveals that the place was used as a prison for a long time. And according to the records, 40 years after its closure, the building was demolished. The gentleman says that, judging by her words, this building still exists and is now used for other purposes. The girl understands that if these people locked in cells are not prisoners, then they are slaves. Jeffrey asks if she's going to go it alone and then tells her that he's trying to solve this problem with radon. But if she makes a mistake, she'll be in big trouble. Suddenly, the lady saw knights pulling a cart with a man in it, and she hid with the help of magic. Gilhard approaches the girl and asks if he imagined it, and she replies that she didn't. And the man asks in surprise what Milady is doing here. The man says that if Julian Orvia is in such a state, it is difficult to imagine what will happen if she meets the leader and suggests that a fight might break out. Charlotte says that if that happens, she'll stop them. He asks, surprised, how she plans to confront the archmages and thinks the leader might listen to her. The girl asks if he has an eye patch. He replies that of course he does, because he always carries it with him. Lottie asks why he carries her around since she thought he'd given up on those stupid kidnappings. He explains that he feels empty without her, and then asks why she suddenly needs a bandage. The lady replies that she will lend it to him for a while, just in case. The boys saw magic, and the main character says that it seems she spread her mana throughout the entire room to find strangers, and therefore from now on he must use mana carefully. Charlotte wonders if Julian noticed she was missing or if she sensed Dan's presence. However, she realizes that either way, they must act quickly now. The girl asks if he said Dan allowed himself to be captured to get into the dungeon. Gilhart explains that he couldn't find the entrance to the dungeon from the outside, and breaking into the building openly didn't seem like the best idea either. He says he's not that sensitive to magic, but the leader said there's something very bad down there. The captain says that he probably already noticed that the people who worked in Avent sent captured people here, and it seems to him that they are doing something terrible to these people. For followers of Doom, using human lives in the name of evil is as decent as it is. And if their proposals are correct, then they must complete their work as quickly as possible. And of course, we must not forget about Lady Orvia, because this matter is more complex and confusing, and he does not even know how it all might end. Gilhart tells Milady that he will do everything he can, even if it means putting his life on the line. She objects, saying that life is a bit too much, but he insists he's ready to take it, since this is the mission entrusted to him by Madame Charlotte. The man asks if she learned about the mission from Lady Charlotte and decided to share the information with the leader since she is Lady Charlotte's sixth apprentice. The lady says it's surprising since news spreads so quickly. Gilhart reports that the leader has been thinking about this whole thing all day, and then asks why she didn't tell him herself that she's Charlotte's sixth apprentice, since it makes him a little sad. The man says that the main thing is that everything is fine with Mrs. Charlotte, and now he understands why the leader behaved the way he did after meeting her. The main character suggests focusing on their situation since they were captured and Julian is looking for them. The girl thought that if Julian and Dan meet, she should be nearby, but the captain says that it is better for them to act together. At this time, the servant informs the Norman master that they have brought him, and then reports that he saw how this man overcame several of their guards with magic. The gentleman says that he was ordered to immediately report strangers and therefore wants to take a look. And after a few minutes screaming, he says that this magician scared him and asks why he had such a look. The servant asks what they will do, and he orders them to get rid of him because he wants to get out of here as quickly as possible. The man says that if it is a magician, then they must first report him. At this point, Madame Riel comes to them, and Norman announces that he is glad to see her. She says she is looking for a person and that it is a woman with a body so tiny it looks like it could fit in a pocket. She has golden eyes, soft wheat-colored hair, and a calm, soothing voice. If they find her, they are not to dare touch her. The gentleman says he's sure this isn't the man she's looking for. She agrees and says the demon didn't look so stupid. Norman asks the lady if it is possible to leave everything like this, and she turns around and leaves. The guy who is sitting in the cage asks what happened to her, and that is why she stayed here. The girl returns and approaches him, then asks what he meant. The guy asks what if he doesn't want to tell her. She jumps on the cage and says he better answer if he doesn't want to anger her. The man says that he doesn't know who she called stupid, and he doesn't know what she's doing here in such a state, and therefore suggests that she come to her senses and do something that she will later regret. Riel remembered some moments and asks if he looked like a pea, and therefore thinks that it is obvious that they have already met and she should tell the teacher about it. Hearing this, the guy, surprised, asks if she knows his teacher. She insists that the teacher he's talking about most likely isn't hers. The man counters, saying that he's been his teacher since the birth of the earth. Suddenly, a knight appeared at the scene using magic. The lady says she asked him to create a magic circle and then asks why he destroyed the entire wall. The captain asks if she thinks it's that easy to create a high-level 5-stage magic circle, and then claims that only a leader is capable of such a thing. The woman says the mana flow could easily be traced backwards, step by step. He thinks that if it were that easy, he would have conquered the world by now, and then argues that if she says so, why didn't he do it himself? Charlotte objects and says her mother is too valuable, and she should save her. The captain asks if everything is okay, since he doesn't understand what happened. Lottie tells him not to worry because he will soon be free. Gilhart thought that she easily found the entrance to the dungeon that even the leader could not find, and she easily dealt with the high-level magic circle that closed the entrance and understands that she did this because she is Charlotte's sixth student. The main character believes that the guards probably heard the noise and will be here soon, and therefore they need to get ready. The guy asks if they're going to fight and then claims he can handle anyone except Orvia. Meanwhile, the girl doesn't understand why he's so excited. Julian looked through the bars and saw the lady there. And then she thought it was strange because she didn't look all that strong, but she easily destroyed the magic circle she had prepared and even found a magic circle hidden under several layers. The young lady asks who she is. The protagonist replies that she already told her it was Julian. At this time, the captain, who was lying on the floor, thought that this girl was addressing her informally. And the main character suggests thinking carefully about what kind of person her teacher is, and then tells her that he steals magic stones, holds innocent people in captivity, and tries to use them for personal gain. Charlotte asks if her teacher really is such a person. At this time, the man thought that these so-called magic stones were of no use, and he added so many, but they were still not enough. The man asks if this doesn't mean he needs to move on to the next option because it will take a lot of energy. So naturally, he needs more mana and needs someone stronger, someone who can't compare to ordinary people. The gentleman says that it would be best to find a person with a huge reserve of mana who could constantly saturate with energy. For example, someone like an archmage. At this time, Julian reflects on the fact that she does not remember anything and what she did in this place. But it seems to her that she was looking for someone and was looking for someone important to her, and believes that if she finds this person, everything will be fine. The girl saw a handsome man with golden eyes and said that he was her teacher. Julian tells the mistress that there's a reason for everything the teacher does, and when the time comes, he'll explain everything. Charlotte, surprised, asks if she really thinks so. The girl insists the teacher wouldn't lie to her. A Norman enters the dungeon, screaming, and asks the mistress what happened and who did it. She explains that it was another intruder and then asks if he was caught. Ather first. The lady objects and says that she will say it herself. At this time, the gentleman appears and Norman reports that strangers have entered the building and he caught one, but it seems there is a whole group of them. Ader asks Riel if they have any strangers and wonders if she missed them. He thinks these criminals are probably very good and he doesn't know what their goal is, then asks if it wasn't all a dream. Ador tells the girl that she must find their trail because he is ready to see the strangers with his own eyes, and then orders her to catch them herself. Riel says she should first check the traces they left behind. He asks, surprised, if there's anything there. The girl tells the teacher that she remembered something, and he tells her to get out of the way. Riel asks if he slept next to a small child. The man claims he ordered her to get out of the way. She says she was there with him too, and asks if he understands. Ader comes closer to the girl and then hits her in the face and claims that he ordered her to get out of the way and shut up and then do what he ordered. Seeing this, the main character could not restrain herself and attacked this man. She grabbed him by the throat and said that he was a vile misunderstanding, who had a terrible habit of using his hands. Ader screams and turns to Riel, and Charlotte says that she tried to wait until Julian realized everything herself, and then says that she thinks it would be better to immediately remove him from the path, and then says that Riel is no longer here. The man turns to Riel and says that this is the woman he saw yesterday, and then says that she wants to finish him off and offers to get rid of her quickly. Mr. Norman tells the girl to quickly grab this woman. At this time, the captain thought that if he acted so carelessly, he would suffer. Juliana shoots a magic arrow at the main character, but she blocks it and offers the girl to relax, then says that after finishing her off, everything will be as she wants, and if she does not want to see her, then she will disappear from her sight. Lottie says that if she can't shoot her, then he shouldn't doubt her but believe her. Eider, watching the girls, tells Riel to shoot her quickly because this lady wanted to finish him off, and whatever she says, she shouldn't believe her words. He believes this lady wants to stop them. The captain says he's digging his own hole. Meanwhile, the main character says she didn't mean for things to go this far, and doesn't know why Julian mistook this man for her teacher. But she doesn't think it's just because he has golden eyes and is wearing a blindfold. Charlotte says that she thinks that she needed a teacher so much that she was ready to believe that such a person could be her teacher, and therefore suggests that she think again why she doubts now. The main character says that if she trusts her, she will tell her everything. How they met, what she has achieved, and what path she decided to take. Lottie says that she wants to tell her everything, even if Julian doesn't remember. She remembers. And therefore, she asks him to trust her because she only needs to take one step. Ader asks Riel if she does it only because she knew and decided to take her, and he thinks that it is impossible to take her away again. She is his, and no one will ever take this girl away from him. The man says he'll kill her herself if she doesn't disappear, because he believes that then Riel will return to her former self. The captain saw that the man was going to attack the lady and warned her about it. At this time, Julian shot an arrow at the Ader and then hugged the main character. Charlotte hugs the girl and says that she is back. The man believes that everything is for the sake of the Pantheon, and as a guardian, she made the best decision. As a result of this marriage, peace in the forest will be ensured, as well as the peoples of the Northwest will be saved. The gentleman turns to Julian and thanks her for submitting to his difficult decision, and then announces that tomorrow they will all become one family, and their strongest union will exist forever, because this is their unity and prosperity. Of the Pantheon will now be with them, which gives them hope, and then asks if that's true. He tells her that tomorrow she will become his bride and asks why she doesn't smile. At that moment, the Marvel mages come to them. The boy, surprised, asks what they're doing here. He tells them to make way for them and then asks what made the mages come such a long way. The mage reports that they have come here to meet the keeper of the Pantheon. The young gentleman claims they have arrived just in time and welcomes them. The main character approaches the girl and asks if they've met before. She says the weather is so nice today and she's very happy to meet her. Charlotte asks if she would mind if she sat next to her and then says that she actually approached her because she has several questions going around in her head, and no matter how much she thinks about it, it all seems strange to her. Lottie says she heard there's a wedding tomorrow, but she doesn't look like a happy bride and then asks if she's getting married voluntarily. The girl replies that outsiders should not worry about this issue. The main character asks if she had business with the keeper of the Pantheon and wonders why that man became the keeper of the Pantheon. The guy announces that he's entering, but the main character has disappeared. The girl, surprised, asks what happened, and he says he thought the lady was upset. So he brought hot tea and brewed some Tirana leaves to help her sleep better. The man offers to drink it warm and have a good rest, and then asks if they can start after the Marvel wizards leave. The gentleman asks why they should care about them, as he believes that without Charlotte Eleanor, the Marvel mages are nothing. He asks if he needs this red liquid to cure his illness, as he was told that the red liquid of a highborn elf is the best ingredient. The man asks how long it will take and how long he needs to wait. He replies that they had originally planned to do everything after the wedding ceremony, and therefore asks him to wait a little and not worry. The gentleman asks if he knows the pain of decaying flesh and then claims that waiting even one day is unbearable. Julian overheard this entire conversation. Upon seeing her, the man asked why she had woken up, as he was sure the lady would be asleep until the following evening. The girl asks in surprise what they've done to her. The boy asks what they should do now that she's woken up, realizing the wedding hasn't happened yet, and the vow has already been broken. He says whether she lives or dies now depends entirely on him. The master announces that she will be the cure for his illness, thanks to that foolish elf who easily obtained the precious ingredient. And once they prove the effectiveness of her blood, they will seize her entire clan and turn them into raw material for the cure, so he suggests not to worry too much. The man says that it was the keeper of the Pantheon who pretended to be so noble, but he is not that stupid, and then asks if she really thought that he would give up the northwestern region for the fact that they sold him one elf. The guy says that even for her red liquid, this is too high a price. Hearing this, Julian hit him, and at that time thought that she had to tell everyone. The elf asks Julian if everything is all right. She tells him they were deceived and that they never intended to give them the northwestern region from the start, as they didn't want an alliance or unity, but only wanted to use their red liquid to create something. The elf, surprised, asks what she's talking about, and then claims she'll soon be a bride, which is why he's wandering around the castle. He insists she'll only become a beloved woman if she takes care of her body and waits patiently. The girl, surprised, asks if he knew everything. He says her sacrifice will bring them happiness and therefore asks him to understand. At that moment, everything went dark before her eyes. The man offers to take a look, because it was he who was chosen by the guardians of the Pantheon, and they believe that he is their only hope. The gentleman says the bleeding is quite severe and then asks if it's okay to leave her like this. The doctor says she's not human and won't die so easily, because she has special enchanted shackles. And even if she wakes up, she won't be able to move a finger again. The doctor says that he feels sorry for this elf, and if he had the opportunity, he would take her home. At this point, Julian woke up and decided to quickly escape. The man, screaming, said she had nowhere to run and therefore suggested they descend slowly, as jumping out the window could kill her. The girl remembered the man's words that as soon as they proved the effectiveness of her red liquid, they would capture her entire clan and turn it into raw material for a medicine. And at this time, she did not understand what to do. Charlotte extended her hand to her and told her to jump because she would catch it, and then told her that she only needed to take one step and trust her. The elf trusted the main character and jumped out of the window. Lottie claims she did a great job and used magic to capture the girl. The lady explains that after meeting her, she went to the Pantheon for the seed, and if she had known that this would happen, she would have stayed by her side. The elf screams, asking what's going on here and what Julian is planning. He claims that no one chooses a guardian and no one becomes one, as one can only be born one. The main character gave the girl a seed and then announced that she was the newly born keeper of the Pantheon. Hearing this, the author screams and declares that the deal is broken in any case, and whether it's Marvel's mages or the guardian, no one can take what's rightfully his. He orders everyone to draw swords and knives and surround these foolish mages. Charlotte asks what they have to do with it. The man turns to Ms. Eleanor and says he doesn't think she should reveal herself, and she tells him not to move. The man insisted their help wasn't needed. Ileana used magic and tied everyone up. The elf asks the girl to have mercy on him because he believes that there was a misunderstanding and therefore offers to talk. The magician looked at the man lying on the ground and said that even though he was in the center of the blow, he still survived and considered this strange. Charlotte tells the girl that she didn't think she needed consolation, and then says that she knows a very good place, and there is a clear sky and the weather is much better than here. And she can't even imagine how beautiful the endless forest is. The main character claims she's sure she'll fall in love with him as soon as she sees him, and then says she can go with him if she wants. Yulman agrees. Ader asks Riel why she looks at him like that, thinking she's his and only his. The knight asks when he'll calm down. At this time, a monster appeared in the mouth of which the Dan was given. Gilhart tells the leader that he's caught a truly big fish. Giuliano tells the teacher to wait a bit while she deals with him, as she has a lot to tell her. Dan tells her not to call her teacher and then says it's Lady Aria. The elf tells Charlotte that this freak is talking nonsense. The leader claims that if her head started working, then he suggests thinking with it carefully and then claims that this is Lady Aria. The teacher suggests that they first sort out the current situation, since they cannot allow him to destroy everything here, and therefore suggests not to forget that there are people locked in the cages. Dan tells the lady that this is not an ordinary demon, and he is sure that it was a man. But then before his eyes, he turned into a huge demon. The guy asks if she remembers the unknown man who summoned the demon in Avent and then escaped. He thinks it looks a lot like him because he was wearing a hooded cape, so he couldn't see his face. The man believes that this is exactly the person in front of them. The main character reflects on what he said, that the man acquired the form of a demon, and she also feels it. And the demons that appeared in Avent had the same origin. Charlotte thinks that it still can't be Evan, but she thinks that she needs to lure him and throw him through the roof. Or better yet, throw him aside and make her way out there. Lottie ponders that if Evan has something to do with what's happening, then maybe he's here too. Dan, seeing the blonde-haired boy, asks what he's doing here. The mage smiles and says they went a bit overboard, cutting off his precious hand so mercilessly. The leader says it was Evan, the mysterious man in Avent, and asks what he's doing here and if his new friend is with him. He also wonders if he taught him how to summon demons. Dan believes that even if the teacher has been gone for a long time, it's no reason to go crazy. He then explains that he meant he became like this because the teacher left. The stranger says that this is very interesting because there are 3 of Charlotte's students here. The elf took the bow and said she thought she should think about the dinner menu in advance. The man said they were all so serious and in a bad mood again. Evan turns to him and tells him to leave. The stranger agrees and leaves. The leader asks where he is going to run because he thinks that now is the time for him to die. Charlotte asks Julian if she's seen Evan here. She replies that it's the first time she's seen him here. The main character wonders if they know that they're using Julian, who has lost her memory, to hold innocent people captive and experiment on them. She wonders if Evan knew about this. The blonde boy tells Charlotte that what she and Dan were looking for is down below. Lottie extends her hand and says it's not too late, and no matter what happens to him, she can help, because she's confident she can fix everything, and so suggests he return to this side. Evan takes her hand and says he wishes it were extended only to him, then hugs her. He says that if this is all his doing, she'll hate him. A student touches a lady's face and calls her teacher. Lottie objects and tells him not to call her teacher. At that moment, Dan and Julian approach them. The main character reports that he said what she was looking for here. Ader, sitting near the wall, reflects on the fact that they think that this is his end. However, he believes that he will finish them all off if he finds the strength, and first of all, he needs to get rid of this woman in Riel. Evan asks if she was looking for traces of death and then says that these are fragments collected from the ashes of the dead, and this is an ugly force created by the greed of fools. Ader thinks that it doesn't matter that the creation is not yet finished, because he believes that he will be the first to receive it, and this power and Riel will all be his. Evan says that they won't even have to go down because he will show them everything. Dan, surprised, asks what's wrong with him, wondering if it might be late puberty or a rebellious phase. Lady says now is not the time for jokes, as she thinks it's best to kill the demon first and try to talk things over. The captain asks what this is and what's going on here, and why everyone's busy with something stupid while he's here working 10 people. He understands that this is the very negative energy the leader sensed, and he has the feeling that this vortex is a condensation of all the worst things in the world. The mage thought it was clear because he saw they'd thought of everything. There were a lot of people here now, and 2 archmages, so if they used him now, everything would be perfect. At this time, the main character thought about what they were now and then tells Julian that they need shelter to protect people. Charlotte reports that Evan is surrounded by energy, but it's too crowded, so she suggests they step back and stay away until she gives the signal. And she understands she must do so because she raised these children. Evan asks what he is going to do, but he flinched when he saw the main character because she had red liquid on her mouth. The guy says he's heard this 100 times already and then asks how much longer they'll make them stand like this. The gentleman says he's answered him exactly 45 times. Jeffrey doesn't understand why there's a red spot on his mouth. Jerome asks the man what he put in His Excellency's tea and puts a knife to his throat. The man explains that they didn't serve tea to anyone. He asks how they dared not give them tea after they had traveled such a difficult journey. He believes the gentleman must have been under immense stress and felt ill from such treatment. At this time, the Archduke opens the door and announces that he cannot wait any longer, and therefore asks that the gates be opened immediately. Louister says he's heard about it, that it's some kind of curse. Then he asks why she shouldn't send her students, since he thinks they should take care of it while they have a picnic. The main character claims that she must figure this out herself, since the investigation is still not complete. Jeffrey asks if she has a solution, and she replies that it's destruction. The master asks what if the curse bearer is a human. Charlotte claims that this is impossible, but if she does not find another way out, then he will die or she will finish him off. And it can be one of 2 things. At this time, the main character understands when she fell and what is happening. Gilhart asks the lady if she is okay, and then explains that the lady suddenly lost consciousness and that Psycho Evan rushed to her, and then the leader and Lady Orvia intervened, and the 3 of them clashed in a brutal fight, and that place now looks like hell. The captain says he saw the ladies fall and follows them. She asks what's wrong with the people locked in the cages and wonders if they're okay. The man explains that everything will be fine with them because the leader is smart enough to come up with something. Charlotte realizes Evan doesn't have red eyes, but she wonders what he's going to do about it. Now that this power is activated, it will be practically impossible to get it out of here. And if talking doesn't help, the only option will be to seal it away. The main character doesn't understand whether it's possible to seal such a huge amount of energy. She knows there are no sealing stones or spirit stones nearby, and Dan and Julian have no experience sealing such energy. Lottie understands that if they do something wrong, they could be in danger, and she doesn't have anything with her that could help her. And she doesn't understand what she can do in such a situation. The captain asks Milady what's wrong and whether she's feeling ill again, and also asks if she can walk and carry her. He tells her to stand there because he'll be back soon. The main character understands that she cannot do anything with such a weak body because she is helpless. Suddenly, the Archduke appears and says that he always considered this to be her shortcoming, and then informs her that she is not alone and asks why she always tries to do everything alone. Jeffrey claims that everyone present here is her magic and her sword, and therefore believes that she can handle everything, because he also likes to act more harshly. Hearing this, the captain doesn't understand what kind of nonsense His Excellency is spouting. And Dan says that annoying old man has come to the rescue again. The Archduke tells Evan that no matter what he has done and no matter what he plans to do in the future, even if he dies and is reborn, he will never defeat the teacher, and therefore suggests that it is better to give up now. The gentleman says he has a bad feeling and he must do something about it. Charlotte tells him not to even dare touch the energy, because if he does, the vortex could become even more dangerous. He asks if she trusts him, then tells her that she trusts herself more.